at Zoom. You can see it in the email I sent you.
Okay.
Just, I'm curious to know now.
Go ahead, Wade.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, everyone. Sorry about that. I take great pride in starting our meetings right at 7:30. We had some technical challenges, so we're a few minutes late. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. My name is Wade Frick. I'm the chair of the Village of Chagrin Falls Board of Zoning Appeals. Tonight, it is our May 25, 2021 meeting. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. If you're new to the BZA, have not attended one of our meetings, a special welcome to you. We try and run what I call an informally formal meeting tonight and every night. So let me take you through kind of what we'll be doing. We will begin. We have 3 applications before us, and the applications we hear are in the order that they were filed. So there's no priority ranking or anything like that. They're just heard in the order that we've received them. What we'll do is I'll ask Rob Jameson, the village administrator, to give us sort of the procedural background, what happened and kind of what's at issue. I'll then turn it over to the applicant or the applicant's representative to make a presentation. The board can ask and will ask questions of the applicant. And then when you're done with the presentation, when the board is done asking questions, we'll go, Christy will open the mic, so to speak, and we will turn it over to the audience. We'll first begin with people who would like to speak on behalf of the application that's being presented, and then we'll turn it over to anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application that's being presented. I mentioned we're informally formal. We do keep minutes, so we ask that everyone, as you speak, A, that we don't speak over one another, but B, that you identify yourself by name and where you live, your address, so that our note taker, who does a wonderful job, can keep minutes of all this. We'll then, once everyone, the main thing is I want everyone who's on this call and on this YouTube meeting tonight to get a chance to speak. We'll let everyone speak and ask questions. We want to make sure that no one leaves feeling like they weren't heard. Once all that's done, the board makes a motion in the affirmative for each application, and then we vote yes or no based on that. So again, each motion will be in the affirmative, and then we vote yes or no off of that. I think that's it. Again, thank you all for joining us. What we'll do is with each application, we'll ask the law director, Dale, to swear in each witness. So before you start talking, if you could wait for Dale to swear you in, would appreciate that. So without anything further before us to start, there's no minutes to approve. I guess looks like we're launching right in to our first application, which is that of Amy Weinfertner for 13 Bell Street. So Rob, could you please give us, there's a number of things here at play. So if you could give us the background and kind of how we got to be here, I would greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely, Wade, thank you. This application is from Ms. Amy Weinfertner, representing SWC Boncasa Holdings, LLC. They are the owner of the building at 13 Bell Street, which is permanent parcel number 931-13-057 in the Central Shopping Zoning District. And they are also leasing the village parcel next to the building. And I'll show that here on the map in a second. That parcel, the lease is already in place and secured for outdoor dining. And that is parcel number 931-13-058 in the Parks Zoning District. So on the, let's see here if I have a good view. In this very basic site plan of the property here, this is the old Mario Spa building adjacent to the Bell Street Park. The 13 Bell Street property, if you can, let me see if I can annotate here and this will make it a little clear. the property line pretty much runs right along the edge of the building between those two parcels. So everything this way is 13 Bell Street, and everything this way in this sliver of property is the village parcel in the Parks zoning districts. And that comes all the way out to the right-of-way line, which I believe is right here. So that comes into play because there's different requirements for each of those different zoning districts on what can happen there. And if you all recall the zoning review letter that I issued for this, I'd issued several items that need to be handled, including several by the Planning Commission, and then several that would require variances. And I'll explain those now. At the April 19th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Planning and Zoning addressed the issue of setting the setback boundaries on the village parcel to allow for the outdoor dining area. And pretty much as this map shows, the outdoor dining is proposed to go right to the property line. It's only about a 10-foot wide parcel. It's a very unique parcel of land, and they did approve the setbacks as proposed. Going back to, hold on a second. Let's see here. And then go to that. So what the applicant is proposing to do is to use the entire village parcel to the right-of-way line in the front as outdoor dining, as well as a section 14-foot wide by about 9.5 feet deep of their own parcel in front of the building for seasonal outdoor dining. And then during the warm months, they would use the front area as well as the side area for their outdoor dining. They would have the appropriate fencing and guards in place for separation between that and the sidewalk and the roadway. The police chief did review this application and commented and worked with the applicant on the appropriate barriers that would be in place. And the applicant can speak more to those details when she presents. When the summer months are over and outdoor dining is no longer viable, this area would return to the 3 parking spaces that are currently in this area, and the outdoor dining area would restrict back to an area that would be at the same depth as the front of the building, and then probably just not utilized during the cold months. So that's in essence what the applicant's looking to do. P&Z decided on the setbacks on the village parcel. That issue was concluded. Then they were asked to review the parking plan for this matter. As far as the parking plan requirements, it would fall under the central shopping district for the building. The amount of outdoor seating that would be new would be the only part that would require additional seating because the building was existing prior to the code changing in 2019 to require that any new additional space in central shopping district be required to meet the parking requirements set forth depending on the type of occupancy that.
Rob, excuse me, Rob, you said this is the only part that requires additional seating. You meant parking?
Additional parking, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry for that mistake. So the outdoor seating in calculating the parking requirement would look at both let's see here. Section 114105 sets the parking requirements for eating places and requires 1 parking space per 50 square foot of floor area, including outdoor eating areas, or 1 parking space for each 2 seats, including outdoor eating areas, whichever is greater. So the proposed outdoor eating area is approximately 789 square feet and has 24 seats proposed. So 16 parking spaces would be required for that outdoor dining area. Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the ideas presented for where those parking spaces could be obtained. They cannot be obtained on the actual site, as this is a very small parcel of land. And the applicant can speak further on her plans for parking and her plans for customer flow. So they did not approve the parking plan. The applicant then requested to proceed with the variance request for the 16 spaces. That is one of the variances that is before the board tonight. The second is outdoor dining in front of the 13 Bell Street parcel. Section 113805A2 requires that outdoor service shall be limited to seating areas which are not located in required setbacks. So the required minimum front yard setback for a building in central shopping is 20 feet. The entire proposed outdoor dining area on this parcel is within the front yard, going right up to the right-of-way line. So we're talking about, let's get back to my annotation here. So this area right here, that outdoor dining area is going to go right up to the right-of-way line and therefore totally in the front yard of that building. So they would require a variance of 20 feet to allow outdoor dining in this part of their proposal. The off-street parking, we went over that. That's the that variance. The third variance before us tonight is to section 114103A, continuation of parking. Requires that all off-street parking facilities shall continue unobstructed in operation and shall not be reduced below the required size as long as the main use remains. The proposed outdoor dining area will displace 3 parking spots when the area is in operation on a seasonal basis. So they would require a variance to this code section. And then the fourth item is river buffer. Section 115102 establishes a 120-foot river buffer area and boundary for property abutting waterways. This entire area is all within the river buffer area. Now, granted, it already is a paved surface. It's a parking area. And the parcel over here was just an access pad for the village to access the dam. Prior to this, there was an air conditioner unit for the previous occupancy back here at some point. But they would need, in order to construct a new use of an outdoor dining area, they would need a variance to the river buffer code section. So that's an overview of the issues that are before us tonight.
Rob,
Rob, I got two
just
questions.
really quickly, before we go on, 114102, A2 is the parking. Can you just go over that really quickly? Because we have 2 different parking here. And I think the 2 different parcels require 2 different parking requirements, or are we combining those? I just wanted that clarified.
Let me just go over that for a second so I can make sure I'm making that clear for all of you.
You were going really fast for me there.
Sure, no, I'm sorry.
I know there's parking required because they're adding seating. So, but there's probably different parking requirements depending on the parcel because one's for the central shopping district and one is in a different
Parks
district.
Right. So
So it makes it complicated. I just wanted you to review
Sure.
that. one time.
So section 114102A2 requires that parking facilities shall be provided for any additional parking requirement resulting from an increase in outdoor seating in the central shopping zoning district. Also, section 114102B1 requires that parking facilities shall be provided for the entire use when a new use is established in all zoning districts outside of the central shopping district, which would include the Parks District parcel. Therefore, parking requirements apply for the entire new outdoor dining area on both parcels in both zoning districts. Section 114105 sets the parking requirement for eating places.
Got it.
The way that I read this might be a good summary. The first one, 114102, is additional parking because they have outdoor seating. The
Right.
second one is just because they're removing 3 parking spaces in the summer for those additional seating.
Correct.
Okay, Rob, I have 2 plot related questions.
Yes.
Where is the split rail fence on this drawing? Is that if I'm looking at the
That
building?
would be
is it split-
this line, like right
Okay.
over here. So the split rail fence is right on the line or very close to it. We recently took that fence out. It was in poor shape. We're going to be, as part of our agreement for leasing of this parcel, The village is going to be installing a concrete pad on the village parcel, and then we are going to be supplying used road brick, and the building owner will be installing that road brick as a paved brick surface for the outdoor dining area from pretty much where the concrete parking area stops going back. We're providing the brick. It's an old used road brick that we have in stock at our service yard, and they are providing the installation of that.
Okay. And then where is the existing property line in represent, in real life, basically? So is it at the edge of the curb? Is it at the edge of the sidewalk? Is it slightly back from the sidewalk? Where does the existing?
It's, let's see here, hold on one
So if we
second.
look at the, because I've had a little bit of trouble with this, figuring out exactly where the edge of the property line really
So
is.
this site plan might give you a little better understanding.
So it's,
This
according to that, I mean, it's beyond, it's almost even with that no, it's behind the telephone pole or almost even with the pole. That must be.
That's
the
a
pole
manhole,
right there.
a manhole, or they're a utility manhole. That's a utility manhole there as well. So you have a trench drain that's located right here in that apron, and it's several feet behind that.
Okay,
This is the actual street line and the curb. You can see that's a catch basin inlet where my cursor is.
okay.
And that's the curb line. The sidewalk is right along the curb as it comes here, and this opens up to an entire solid paved area as it goes through the rest of the frontage of that building. So
The property line, Andrew, is right above where it says S65
Yes.
degree.
Yeah.
That
so
solid
Yeah, yeah.
line, that's
Let
the
me-
property line.
let me indicate that. So the property line and the right-of-way line is right here.
It's just hard when I physically went out and look at the site versus the drawing. It's a little, there isn't a great like indicator when you look at it to be like, okay, this is where the property line is. So my drawings now line up. I have a frame of reference for them.
Is
Yeah.
there any encroachment into Bell Street Park from this?
No, there isn't. The outdoor
It seems
dining
so
patio
tight
goes
there.
right to the edge of this parcel. Granted that both these parcels are owned by the village. They're both
Right.
zoned parks. They always were separate parcels, and council had made a determination back in 2011 that outdoor dining was an appropriate use for this parcel. There has been a lease agreement in place for multiple years, and it was recently revised
Right.
to allow for the use of this area as an outdoor dining.
Do we know when the lease expires?
I do have that, if you could give me a quick second.
Hey, Rachel,
You
hey,
remember-
Next year, the lease expires, and then it'll be renegotiated at that point. The modification was done to an existing lease just this year, and it'll give us into 2022 where we would renew it or make any additional changes at that time.
Is
Rachel,
there, could you remind me, is there a liquor license associated with this project?
Yes, there is.
Rachel, if you're considering the motion, I don't know if you have in your packet Rob's April 13 letter to Ms. Weinfertner. It lays out in pretty good detail the various items that are needed that we're considering tonight, including the off-street parking issue. It was further back in the pile. It's a 2-page letter, April 13, 2021.
Okay, I'll look. at
Highlighted,
it.
looks like this, highlighted.
I see.
And I have, hold on a second, let me clear my annotations.
Thank you, Wade.
And here's that letter here.
I see it. I got it.
Okay. Hey, Rob, could you remind us, so this was the central shopping district was subject to a couple of changes when it came to parking. I mean, I remember many, many years ago, planning and zoning basically made a change that essentially said that new facilities coming in central shopping district didn't have to worry about parking. And then that was amended, I think, or changed in 2019. Is that correct?
Yes, in August of 2019, the section adding off-street parking and loading requirements was added. So the way that that applies is any new building, any new space that's added within central shopping would come under review based on the planned occupancy for a parking requirement. So this building existed prior to 2019. Its occupancy is allowed within the building in that zoning district. So nothing inside the building requires a parking plan. It's not a new building at all. The only thing that is new is the outdoor dining area. And based on the two code sections, that's why that would apply.
Yeah, and I just want to be
Hey, Rob,
clear.
can
So,
I-
so in some of the restaurants like yours truly expanded, they did so prior to 2019, and they didn't have the same parking considerations that we now have because the code has been changed. So for instance, the Gamekeepers restaurant, now they actually had to submit a parking plan because, well, they're actually proposing fewer seats. But is that correct, Rob? Or Dale, you were chiming in, I think.
Well, I was chiming in about the lease.
Oh,
I
okay.
found the lease. The lease term ends June 11th of 2022, but they have a 5-year option to renew. So there's theoretically another 6 years and a month left to the lease.
Thank you, Dale.
Okay. But my point was when Bell and Flower and some of those other restaurants made changes, they didn't have the same parking constraints that are now back in the code after the change was made in 2019.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that's lots of good preliminary information. Any other questions of Rob before we get going here? I guess, Rob, I had one. The river buffer only applies to not to anything in the village property, but only the front piece. Is that correct?
Hmm.
No, it applies to all properties.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it would apply to the village.
Okay.
The
All right.
outdoor
I didn't
dining
think
area and the
I didn't
village
think I
park.
heard that. So I just want to make that sure. Okay.
Yes, it's anything that gets built in that river buffer.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. All right. Well, all that being said, thank you, board, for preliminary considerations and questions. We'll turn it over to the applicant. Is Ms. Weinferner speaking, or who's speaking on behalf of the application? Christy, I guess that's you opening up the.
Absolutely. I see Amy and Eddie both on the call. If you could use the raise your hand function in Zoom to let me know who would like to speak first. If I don't see a hand, I will just admit Amy.
And we have to see you. The law director needs to see you to swear you in. So hopefully you'll be able to get your camera on and be seen here.
Sure.
This is the last month we'll be able to do this.
So
Next month?
Amy, there she is.
Can everyone
right.
hear me in person next month?
We can hear you, yes. So Dale, can you please swear Amy in, please?
Sure. Can you raise your right hand for me, Amy? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, the floor is yours.
Okay. So we are very excited about this project. We think it's going to add some real vibrancy to the Little Bell Street area that's there. We've made quite an investment. I hope everyone has read the application that I submitted. It gives a little bit of the history of this building. As most people in Chagrin know, it's been empty for close to 15 years, maybe longer than 15 years. So it's a tough spot. There's some practical difficulties with this building, and we're really excited. Kind of all the stars have aligned here. We've got someone that's interested in the space. He's got great ideas. He's reviewed the marketplace, and our intention is to serve people that are already in the village. It's a really great space. We're really excited about it. So yeah, and Eddie is also on the Zoom, and he'll speak more and speak for this project in general. So,
Okay.
and I do have a question based on the old lease. So if there was an old lease in place for patio dining, and I didn't ask this question before, but wouldn't that supersede the 2019 parking requirement for
No,
space?
No.
no.
Okay.
There was no plans that were actually went through to the point of a zoning review and approval,
Okay.
and it was a different applicant as well.
Okay.
So no variances were, anything was actually approved.
Okay.
Yeah, and the lease doesn't override the zoning.
Okay. Okay. Well, that as buyers, that was a bit of a surprise to us. So, we I don't know. I think we've got some great plans for this property. So it's there's some real practical difficulties with it, as you have read the application. Lot of interest, not a lot able to go in and make this work. So it's a very unique opportunity that I think is really good for the village.
Would you like Eddie to speak, or do you want us to ask questions of you? How would you like to
Why
put
don't you-
everything out there?
Why don't you
first?
start asking some questions, and I'll answer what I can answer, and then maybe Eddie pops in where it's logical. Is he able to be on this part to be accessible?
Yes, Dale, can Eddie chime in now if he's sworn in, or how do you want to proceed with the testimony?
No, I would say you should examine Amy, and then if anyone else has any questions they want to ask her, but we do that before we start with Eddie.
Okay. So, well, I'll start, Amy, with just sort of a broad brush perspective of what our challenges or what we're trying to do. Just know that I mean, subjectively, many people in the village are, from what I could tell, extremely excited about something going in there. So please don't mistake any of the questions we ask you as indicating we don't want you here or don't want anything to happen there. Everyone I've ever talked to is thrilled that something's happening, but our challenge is, we have a code, and the code says we have to find, let's call it practical difficulty. You have to show us that no matter what you do, you can't meet what our code asks for. And one thing I can tell you that is, I suspect, a challenge with others on the board, but I'll let them speak for themselves, is parking. Parking is something that people have been complaining about in Chagrin Falls for 50 years, I think, and probably will always complain about. So can you speak to what efforts you've made or what considerations you've given to alleviate any parking, any of the parking issues that you heard raised by Rob and was set forth in the letter? What have you done to look into your off-street parking issues? And is there something that can be done?
Well, we did look at some of the peak hours, and the Bell Street location. So all of our neighbors have their own parking. So their needs for parking are not, as it relates to any public space anyway. There are metered parking across the street. Over time, there's usually availability there. There's 15 metered parking spots there. The other thing is we have a model, Eddie has a model going forward that's not, again, it's serving the people that are already there. It's not destination dining that people will drive in for. So people are already parked and walking around. Another solution that he came up with was using sort of a multimodal support. So really encouraging biking, putting bike racks there in the space or near the space, that just encourages. So in terms of parking problems, that whole Bell Street side is not, you know, there's been availability. You can find parking.
Have
And
you talked
Go
with
ahead.
the owner of the lot, the plaza lot?
I did. I talked to her. She was mostly concerned about the lunch hour. She felt that the parking, the percentage parking, because when we had been there any given time, and I do have pictures, there had been 25, 35% availability in that lot. And again, there's been availability almost always on the metered spots. So it was a concern of hers that would be a concern, but we were not asking for committed parking on her end whatsoever.
What are your proposed hours of operation for the restaurant?
Eddie might have to answer that specifically. I have an idea, but I don't know if anything's.
Will you be open for lunch?
Yes.
7 days a week?
Eddie, are you on the call? I don't know which day.
We'll leave
yes,
that to, hold on, Eddie, we have to swear you in.
Okay.
Let's just keep
Okay.
going. We'll keep going and we'll make a list of questions for Eddie. then.
Okay. I'm not sure
Um,
if it's 7 days.
Okay, but lunch and dinner is the plan.
hmm
Okay.
And there's no bar, there's no late, you know, the intention, at least I believe in the summer, Eddie can clarify when he can speak. I believe it closes at 10, maybe
Okay.
9.
Why do you need the space in front of the restaurant? It looks like two tops there. Why do you need that? Can you not get by with this, just the side of the side property?
Well, there's a couple of things. So the original plans from the owners prior to us had just that dining area, but then had benches on the other side, because if you actually look at the building live, it would be awkward to have people pulling in and out as people were going into the patio dining area. So yeah, you could say there's parking, but practically, you know, how does that work? How does they would get in from the one area and then people would be pulling in and out next to people dining. So.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, do you need the space if you just took the front of the building and drew it directly to the west? Would that be feasible? If you just, Rob, if you could, is it clear from what I'm saying? Just continue the building straight to the left on this diagram.
Well, you can park in front of the patio. There's not enough space. This drawing doesn't really show you. There's like a big curve right there. So
Right.
you park there. And if you park to the side, you know, there's people sort of pulling in and out as people are entering.
Where would people enter the patio?
They would enter to the side of the door. Yeah, there's a gate there in the next picture. Oh yeah, there it is. You can see the gate.
Rob, could you show that? Where?
In or enter at the side. Yeah. And again, this is just seasonal. It reverts back to parking when people don't like to walk as much, quite frankly.
But are you talking about 2 and 2? Is that, you're talking about 4 seats in that area?
Yeah, like two tops potentially.
And what I was saying is if you took the building line and ran it straight across, Rob, could you go down to the corner of the right there and just draw that straight to the left? Could you do that and have enough seating on the side?
Well, you couldn't park in front of there, right? So that parking spot wouldn't be there anyway. There's not
Okay.
space there. And then to have the two on the side, yes, you could do that, but it is awkward to have people pulling in and out as people, from a safety standpoint, to have people sort of entering the patio while people are parking. That's why I think the original drawings were drawn with bench seating there.
Well, is it, you can get to the patio from where Rob drew that door in the middle of the building? Is that accurate? Right there?
Yes,
I mean, so theoretically, you could wall off that side, so the only entrance onto it is through the building itself?
yes.
Okay. I'm just looking at,
What
you know, one of the requirements is continuation of parking, and I'm just looking at that just to make sure I understand what your request is and why it needs to be. That's all I'm trying to understand.
There's also just the beauty of the building. So, you know, everyone wanted it restored in an original fashion. And, you know, we made a very large investment in that oval window. And, you know, we didn't have to do that if there's going to be, in the summer and particularly, a car parked in front of that. So, I mean, there's multiple considerations there. It's a beautiful building, quite frankly, that will be covered.
Can I ask a question about the parking there today? That's not a public parking spot. It's private parking for that building. Is that correct?
It's not marked in any way. Yeah, it's
But
people just,
nobody's parking there thinking it's a parking on the street. It's not really, right? I just want to make sure nobody's using that as a parking spot. The building's been closed for a while, but if I remember correctly, this is not a valid public parking spot. I mean, somebody might park there and then the parking police may not notice it, but I'm just clarifying, you know, on the other side, there's meter spots, obviously, you know, up the regular road, but on this side of the street, you've got the Chuck's parking, you know, in front of their building, which is private parking for their building. It is not like nighttime parking, find a spot there. And then same with this building.
it's not public parking, no.
Correct. Okay.
And people aren't parking there now. And not that we're blocking it off. There's just nobody parking there.
Right. So the reality is it's not really taking away parking from public use anyway. It was always used as a private parking spot for whatever this building was.
I don't know that the code differentiates between public and private parking. It just says parking spaces.
Those parking spaces are mostly in the right of way and partly on private property.
And-
Right. But we're not, I just want to clarify that we're talking about parking spots that are, I mean, I know there's parking requirements if you're going to have outdoor dining and we can deal with all of that. I just want to make sure we recognize and discuss the realities. We are not taking away public parking spots. Nobody's parking here and walking over to a restaurant in the central district to go eat. So we are not making a public parking spot issue worse in the village. We're just adding more retail, you know, to the village. I call it retail, you know what I mean? By bringing, you know, more people, but part of this, obviously this building is super small and it's not a restaurant structured to bring in, you know, people that are a destination, because the destination is Chagrin Falls and they might go get food at this restaurant.
Amy, how many employees are you projecting?
You're going to have to ask Eddie.
Okay, and where are they parking?
They're planning to park in the village permitted area. So we were given information on where they could park. We have talked to Jason up the street. He's considering letting maybe one or two, but he's not made any commitments there whatsoever. So he's not part of the plan right now. The plan is to just park in the employee permitted parking.
I want to go back to the parking space question. I mean, a good chunk of this where they're putting 1 4-top and 1 2-top is land that they are leasing from the village. And you have to remember, when you look at it from the street, the integral curb dips down to road level and then it is concrete going into there. So those are technically parking spaces that are on, village-owned property.
But it's not used for that. That's the only thing there, that people aren't parking there as public.
And the village is.
Hi there,
leasing-
it's,
We are leasing it, but at the moment, I mean, it's technically village-owned. It's still, we have a lease, but it is technically village-owned parking.
No, the village is leasing it to an LLC. I mean,
Correct.
doesn't mean they can do what they want with it, but like, it doesn't mean it's public parking anymore. And I agree, we're both just talking about those front two tables.
Yeah, and then my other question is, what are you doing to protect patrons from vehicle strikes? Because, I mean,
there will be bollards.
okay,
In
like
effect,
regular traffic control bollards, or are we talking K-rams?
There's bollards and planters that police chief suggested.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I was wondering the same thing, which Wade, back to your point on the patio, it's another reason that if you're gonna have a patio there, to remove any possible parking near, in my opinion, near that patio, so that there isn't any accidental, I meant to press the brake, but instead I ran over 4 people eating. So I think I was gonna ask, is it necessary for you to put back the parking spots ever? I mean, I understand that you're trying to be flexible and saying part of the year, obviously when snow, you're not planning on, plastic, covers and making this a seasonal patio. But is it necessary to put back the parking ever? I was a little concerned about having it there at all.
I thought I read that you're planning on a big takeout business. Is that accurate?
It particularly during COVID, again, Eddie will have to answer this, but particularly during COVID, that was part of the plan, because that's how you managed business during COVID. So all that is sort of adjustment. It's people will have the ability to take, yes, but people will have the ability to sit down as well. In regards to Rachel's question, again, Eddie will have to answer that, but when the patio space you can actually pull in, potentially that could be the only parking space and not put parking on the other sides. Eddie, I don't know how he feels about that as a tenant and accessibility, but possible.
I'd also like to remind us, because to go back to the lease is only for the land to the left as you're looking at the building, right? It's not the area in front, it's only to the stuff to the left of the building.
To the left of the building, coming all the way out to the right-of-way line. Correct.
Well, unclear with the last.
It comes 9.5 feet above in front of the building, or is it parallel?
It runs perpendicular to the front of the building, but it goes 9.5 feet in front of the building. Yes.
Okay.
So it extends, it's literally, if you were to take the side edge of the building, and I'm drawing on my screen, which none of you can see, but it literally goes straight all the way out to the right away. Kind of where that dotted line is.
Gotcha.
How many potential patrons outside if it were full?
We are showing 24.
Including the 2 tables in the front.
Yes. They're well spaced.
This might be a better question for Rob, but how do we distinguish when most of the parking is in the right of way? Because you can't get a full car in 9.5 feet. How do we distinguish the difference between publicly owned parking and privately owned parking when there's a majority or a portion of it in the right of way?
Well, we don't really distinguish the difference of that. It's the way that the lot lines fall and the way that the parking was originally drawn up in front of the building.
Andrew, there's a standard for parking spaces.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have, the right of way in this close up drawing, you have the right of way, which is approximately, I would say 1/3 of the depth of a parking space, because it just in my recollection of being over there seemed to be if a car pulled in, that a car would roughly come out to the trench drain area right around there. So that's roughly 1/3 to 1/2. If the car, say, was a little further back, the sidewalk area is kind of where this dotted line is here, kind of further out as the road jogs. So it's about 50-50 to 2/3, 1/3 sort of split between those spaces.
Could we get Eddie sworn in? I feel like I'm out of my element here because this is really a lot of his planning. Could we get him sworn in so he could speak?
And Rob, could you go back to the previous slide? That's at least more helpful for me, yes, to see that one where I can see the building. So, okay, thanks. So yeah, Christy, can you make Eddie live? And then when he's live and we can see him, Dale, you can swear him in, please.
Yes. Eddie, I'm trying to find you on Zoom. Oh, he was in. There you are, Eddie. Can you give us a sound check?
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead, Dale.
Okay, Eddie, would you, can you raise your right hand for me again? Thanks. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Eddie, you've heard all of our questions. I don't know if you just want to proceed with your own presentation or whether you want us to fire questions, whatever, however you want to proceed.
No, I'll speak a little bit and I'll be able to hit some of the questions you had. And if I missed any, please follow up. I think I just want to kind of start off with, really what we're trying to bring to the area is, local, fresh, and for the community. And Amy kind of hit on it. We are a dining establishment, but we are a type of service that is not multiple courses. So the time frame to actually dining there won't be as lengthy as some of the areas that are in Chagrin Falls. So we're kind of bringing a new aspect to the area of more of that European street food style, where we would love to have patrons come in and dine in, but if they want to have the option to get their food and take it and walk, we're going to have that very accessible with the type of to-go where we have and utensils and things of that nature. Just with the kind of the times we're in, we're really trying to get with that more of that eco-sustainable movement with people walking around, enjoying the outdoor, where we mentioned the bike racks, which is something we would definitely like to be able to introduce down the road. And as far as some of the things too, I mean, 40% of retail right now is restaurants. And a lot of the things, if you look at the research right now, the reason why restaurants are surviving right now is because of patio dining and outdoor seating. A lot of cities and a lot of other states have extended patio dining into streets, into parking lots, that all these things throughout different cities have been passed due to the fact that, in order for a city to succeed, these restaurants need to succeed because, they're bringing in people, which is helping, not just for the individual restaurants, but for the city itself and bringing in new people to enjoy everything that's going on. So really what we're trying to do is be a part of what Chagrin Falls is already doing, which is great, to have another option for folks. So I'm not necessarily saying we want to bring more folks in, but what we really want to do is take the people that are already there and give them another option of people who are already planning on going to Chagrin Falls. And I know, Wade, you had a couple questions about the patio being shorter with just the inside entrance. With one of the speculations with that is you do need to have, when you have a patio due to fire code, you need to have an outside entrance and exit where people can get out from the patio. So that would be an issue if that front area is blocked by a car and the fence, there's nowhere to get out and something has happened. Now you're doing a problem with egress. So, I mean, I don't know if that kind of helps with that question, but you do need to have an exit and entrance on the physical patio. The drawing where you were referring to, that's actually inside the building. So there would be no way to get in and out unless you went through the front of the building. So, you know, so I don't know if that kind of helps with that. We're just really looking to bring something else. Another thing is we're not taking reservations. We're first come, first serve. So if I'm full, you know, I'm not going to be able to have a waiting list. It's first come, first serve. So you can come back later. You can go park somewhere else, go walk somewhere else. And if the parking's completely full in that area, well, if you want to come to the establishment, then you're going to have to walk there just like you would have somewhere else. And, you know, trust me, I mean, that's an issue that I think everybody in Chagrin Falls has to deal with. So we're really just trying to bring a new aspect to the actual city itself. And then you know, if you guys have some more questions, I would love to answer anything that I'm able to.
Hours of operation.
So hours of operation, it's going to be Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then Friday and Saturday, 11 to 10 p.m. And to kind of hit on somebody with the liquor, with the bar, with the patio, we do have a liquor license, but we don't have a physical bar. So all the drinks will be in cans or bottles itself, where it will be in a cooler. So say you're ordering your pizza, you then could have, you know, a beer or a wine, but everything would be in a physical can. So we're not introducing an actual full service bar, but we do have a full service liquor license.
What's the capacity inside?
So with the capacity inside, I will have 32 seats. I'm going to have some like bar height seating, not a bar, but some of the seating is going to go to the extent of the back of the window that's looking over the falls. There's going to be about 8 bar height seats back there. There's going to be 4 bar seats in front of that front new window that Amy has installed that looks beautiful. And then there's also on this other side window, another 4 bar seats. And then we'll have 4 tables, 4 tops inside. So that's a total of the 32 seats inside.
So almost half your seating is outside.
Correct. And that's one of the things that when I was doing this and I was putting the projections together, it's very viable to have that seating to be able to, you know, be able to do what I need to do as a business owner to make sure that we can be sustainable and we want to be part of this city for a long time. I mean, our intentions are to be here for the long run. And when you don't have certain things you can't do, it limits you. I mean, I'll be honest with you, one 2-top table over the course of the year could be your rent. So, I mean, you know, for the whole year. So these are things that I calculate very much so. And I really do need to utilize the full amount of space that we possibly can to be, you know, to be able to survive of what restaurants are going through right now, quite frankly. We're all put in a very tough position and, you know, we're all here to, you know, have a business and, you know, try to create a really unique, cool experience for people. And that's really what I want to bring to Chagrin Falls.
How many employees?
So the nice thing about the employees is with not being as large of a space, I don't have to have as much overhead. So at any given time, you may have, you know, 4 to 5 employees working at a time. You know, and that would be on a very busy scheduled day. That would be on a busy Saturday. On a Tuesday, I might only have 2-3 employees, with obviously me being in there. So if you look in there, I would not be able to have much more than that. When you go inside into the actual restaurant itself, it's a fully open kitchen, which is great. You're going to see this beautiful pizza oven that was it's a Cunto oven that was custom made in Italy. It's going to be looking right over the falls, but there's not really much space for a lot of people back there. So there's going to be somebody taking orders. You'll have somebody walking around, assisting and things like that and hosting. But as far as the staff, you're not looking at like a full service restaurant with bartenders, runners, you know, all these extra things that a lot of restaurants you see. So you're not going to have to worry about as much people parking. And we are committed to parking to where the city allows for employees. That's not going to be an issue at all.
Can I just add that highlights the creativity that was necessary to get this building occupied. This was 15 years of challenges. There's nothing easy about this building, nothing. And his creativity to make this work is amazing. We are lucky. That's all I have to say.
Anyone from the board have any questions? Any other questions from the board?
So, I mean, when we evaluate parking plans, we evaluate both their use of public and private parking. I mean, at least that's my indication when we did whatever's going in at Gamekeepers or Board and Bowl, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, parking's kind of parking in terms of those parking plans, and it doesn't really, we really don't distinguish the difference between publicly owned and privately owned parking with those plans.
Correct, because it's,
Correct.
you evaluate the public side of it, and what other uses or other establishments are using the public parking in the area, and then you look at any agreements that the business owner may have with abutting private properties as well.
Just remember the point, though, that for 15 years, this parking hasn't been used.
So, Rob, is there anything that like could go in here that doesn't need a parking variance?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of uses that could go in the building itself, and the restaurant, if it was only within the building, would not require any additional parking. It's only with the addition of the outdoor dining area that the additional parking requirement comes into play.
Because it's in the central shopping district?
Yes, and it's additional new space that was not previously utilized for a business.
Jim, they
Are there
could
any
eliminate
other- Go ahead, Wade.
they could eliminate the need for the variance on continuation of parking if they left the 3 spots in front. But you'd have the issues of, you know, whether the rest of the tables came all the way out next to the car and where the egress would be and all that.
I got disconnected for a few minutes. I wanted to ask a question about how close those parking spots are to the street and whether those really are legitimate parking spots. If you have people going in and out of there, either whether it's winter or summer, it seems really congested and dangerous.
So, Rob, what do we spec for striping on publicly owned parking lots? Is it like the US standard? Is it 18 by like 8 and 6 or something?
The minimum is 9 feet in width. I'm not sure
9
on the depth. Harry, do you recall the depth? I couldn't find
So we're
that.
going 9 feet. Those are US oversized, which are like 9 by 20.
I didn't see the reference to 20 when I looked it up. I saw the 9-foot width minimum.
Well, like DOT specs it as like if we spec a 9 in width, it's 20 feet in length.
That could be true. I can't tell you right off the top of my head.
Sure, I just want to stop real quickly. The plan that you're presenting most of the time will not have parking. And we talked about why the 3 parking spots wouldn't work anyway to avoid the variance and some practical difficulties there. That I understand that conversation. I go back to what I asked before, and maybe Eddie has an answer. Why are we bringing back the parking spots at all? You'd have to redo the ballards. There'd have to be some clear lines. Were you just trying to do what you can to make a less of a variance, saying, you know, I can't have the parking this because we want to add the patio? I'm just a little confused about why we're kind of sort of removing the parking, but then adding it back. I don't understand the value there.
Okay, Rachel, yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. So when we met with the chief of police, we did talk about getting barriers that can be put in and put out, but they'd be bolted down. And our contractor would be fine with doing that. And we showed actual pictures to the chief of police, and she seemed to be on board with that. And the reasoning also to do that is, so in the summertime, it's very walking accessible. And I'm going to go back down to the survival of restaurants right now. When it comes to wintertime, when you have less foot traffic and you need to survive on people not just coming in, but carry out, that's where carry out really comes important, where I want people to be able to easily access to be able to grab a to-go pizza, where they can have some parking that's close, where they don't have to, say, park on the street or find a public parking spot in Sugar Falls to walk over to get their pizza to go. Because when things become a hassle, you might not get as many orders, which is going to affect my bottom line. So that's how I look at it as a business sense of the reasoning to do that. So I hope that answers that question.
It does. So understood. And so can you go back to the picture of the actual building?
Sure,
here?
hold on.
That's from Google Earth. Well, Rob's doing that. I found the answer on the size of the parking.
I did as well, yeah.
It has to be 9 feet wide at a minimum and 180 square feet. So if you're going to have 9-foot wide lots, they have to be 20 feet deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they're 10 feet wide, then you can have an 18-foot deep parking spot.
DOT oversized.
So the parking spots are gonna come back 2 parking spots in the front here?
Correct. Because
And
if
they're
you
gonna
look
be
in
te-
front,
are they
in the
gonna be
front where
tested?
the, it's owned by, where we're leasing from you guys, I don't believe that that's gonna have enough for a physical parking spot, even without the barriers there, just based on where it lies. So it's gonna be adding the two other spots.
And the 2 spots would be, there are 3 pillars there right in front. There's one by the door, one there, right. The 2 spots would be between those 3 pillars.
That is correct.
And the current
Not
third
in front
spot,
of the door, not in front of the door,
right.
obviously.
And the current third spot we're referring to is where? Right there,
So-
okay.
Right
Yep.
there, yes.
So if you actually look, if you look at a 9x20 where that sidewalk is, because the sidewalk comes in a little bit closer in that first, if we want to call it that first spot,
Right.
you know, I know we've kind of looked at, it would have to be a compact, if it was parking, it would have to be a compact car only parking. And if that is allowed, that would have to have a signage, of course. But that would, like, for instance, I have a truck. There's no way I'd be able to park there.
Yeah.
Wintertime, summertime, it doesn't matter, because you cannot block that sidewalk.
Right,
So
but
I would,
it's not
yeah,
20 feet, or it's not even 18, I don't think.
correct.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
20
parking
feet
spot
from
would
that.
not be there anyways.
Isn't it 20 feet from the front of this building to the farthest part of that sidewalk? To the right of way?
Are you talking for the first parking spot?
For the other 2, yeah.
The other 2, yes, because you can kind of see the sidewalk comes back a little bit more because it has this extended area that comes towards the curb. I'm not sure if you can quite see that. So it's like the sidewalk starts off as a sidewalk and then becomes part of the land parcel.
Mhm.
And then see how the sidewalk then extends further out?
Yeah.
That's where that is coming from.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Eddie, this is Harry Edwards. Real quick, did the Department of Commerce require you to put in ADA parking?
No, they did not.
Okay.
The age of the building. So you talk about a street food concept. I'm just curious about the turnover. I mean, are we talking about something other than pizza here? Are we talking about people sitting and eating a pasta dish?
Yeah,
So
so,
why is it
yeah,
gonna be
no,
a
I'm not
turnover?
gonna have, like, so my options is gonna be, I'm gonna have Naples style pizza. And then it's all gonna be individual, so they're 9-inch pizzas. And then I'm gonna have gelato, salads, and then I have some beer, wine, and, you know, mixed liquor drinks in cans. And then that's my menu. So, and then I have some Italian ice, which is another beverage, which is gonna be in a machine.
Dessert. It's a dessert.
Or dessert. Oh, then we have, yes. So then we have what's called the congelato, which is gelato in bread. So from my pizza dough, I'll be making like little miniature loaves where the actual gelato then will be put inside of that, which is a great street food because you walk around, and this is a big thing in Naples, where you walk around with your, like, it's like a little Italian ice cream sandwich is the easiest way I can describe it.
Okay, thanks.
So, and when I kind of go back to street food, it's street accessible. So we want patrons to come in and enjoy our fair and enjoy the scenery and, you know, being right on the falls. So we're not deterring from that fact whatsoever. But at the same time, if somebody wants to just come in as they're already in the park, already enjoying the beautiful day, already walking around, say they're grabbing, you know, something from down the street and they just want to get a quick bite to eat, that's also an option where they can come in. You know, my pizza's cooking 90 seconds. So, you know, you're not going to have to wait a half hour for your pizza and things of that nature. So that's the beautiful of this thing. This oven's at 900 degrees. We're doing a wood burning oven where we're going to be able to, you know, handle people and be able to get them in and out if they want that. But if they want to sit down and enjoy, you know, sit down on the patio, you know, listen to a little bit of music, we'll also have that available as well.
And I'm sorry, how many seats inside?
So there is the 32 seats inside, but those aren't all tables. There's 4 tables that are 4 tops. And then there's not a bar, but bar height countertops on the back of the windows where you're overlooking the falls. And then in the front window that Amy put in, there's going to be some more bar height seating there. And that's another thing we kind of talked about in the summertime. When people are sitting there with the ambiance, you know, we're gonna have this beautiful location, we're beautifying the space. You know, it's been a sore eye for so long. By having that, and then you're looking out into a patio is gonna be a lot, that atmosphere is gonna be, you know, a lot more acceptable than looking into, say, like a parked car or anything like that in the summertime.
Okay, thanks.
I got a question about the, I guess the village parcel. What is that? That's not parkland, is it? Or
It is park.
it is parkland? Okay.
It is zone parks and it is a parcel owned by the village. It's a separate parcel from the park, but then there was some consolidations done. It's never been used as parkland. It's never been green space. It's always been used as an access way to the dam. Should there
Yeah,
need to be
they
for
used to have a
maintenance or
dumpster
repair.
years ago. I remember when it was, when they were going to change it to a restaurant 12 years ago, and it was supposed to be, I think they were doing outdoor seating there too, but I can't remember exactly.
They're also proposing to enclose the whole area and extend the building
Yeah,
over
that
that
was a
parcel. And
bigger-
the village did not want to do that.
And sorry to cut you off there, Jim, too. And another reason too, Rachel, with the chief police, the reason why she liked the barriers that can come off was for the exact reason, if you need to get like a big machinery access to the actual falls, that is going to be manageable without having to cut down a tree or destroy anything.
Right.
Jim, a little history here. When Mario's owned the building, that concrete slab housed the HVAC units for the Mario's building. It was always under the impression that Mario's owned that concrete pad, and it wasn't until they sold the building that it was discovered that was village property.
And it was actually, it was subject of a citizens referendum, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yes.
Well, I believe we approved like variances for it, and then the citizens referendum had something to do because it was parkland.
Right.
But yeah, and then I think it actually got, the citizens voted for it, and then the restaurateur, you know, found another location outside of Chagrin during that.
Correct.
I feel like a lot of people are gonna fall into the river from the end of that patio. I'm just kidding. Hopefully you'll put a fence up there.
No, yeah, no, there's definitely gonna be a fence. And if you're gonna look at that way area, so where the AC unit goes, that's kind of where the curb is, and I'm not gonna be putting a table on top of the AC unit. So.
That's where Jim wants to sit.
Just like in shooters.
All right, other questions of Eddie or Amy? All right, Christy, can you go first? Would like to open the mic for anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the proposal.
Before you do that, Mr. Chairman, Amy had mentioned she had some photographs earlier. I didn't know if she wanted to introduce any photographs or other documents as part of her presentation.
I could. It's really just photographs of the open parking. You could do that if you want, but I don't know if it's necessary. It just shows Bell Road parking at the dinner hour on Saturday night and the emptiness and, you know, some other areas.
That's your call whether you want it or not. I just wanted to make sure you didn't forget that.
Does anyone need to see it or want to see it?
I don't.
Which
We're good.
Saturday?
Thank you, though.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dale. So Christy, back to you. Anyone raising their hand to speak in favor of the application?
I do have a hand raised from Rick Siegfried. I will promote him to the conversation. Again, it takes a moment to connect. Rick, when you're able, if you could start your camera and unmute, please.
I know he's there, I just don't see him yet.
Can you hear me now?
We
I
can
can
hear
hear
you. We
you.
can't. There we go.
Can
We
you
got
see
you
me now?
on the beach.
Rick, would you raise your right hand for me?
So,
Rick,
so I'm listening because you're gonna hear Bobby later on. We're gonna talk about a fireplace and
Rick,
lot
Rick,
like-
Rick,
Rick,
Hey,
Rick.
hey, Rick, I got to swear you in first.
oh, sure.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Of course I do.
Thank you.
You're up.
So again, I'm just here because I got something coming up later, but we are the architect of record on this, and just, I kind of can't help myself because we've been involved in this project for over 12 years and it may be 15 years. We've permitted this thing 4 times already. And because of the financial ramifications of developing this piece of property, the first 3 people just never made it happen. And, you know, so Amy and Eddie, they got this thing going on and it's nice. Originally, we were going to go 14 feet out over the river. Those tables are gone. That parking is gone. So I don't know why you guys wouldn't consider this thing as a viable piece of the community fabric, you know, as an energetic and lively piece of our economy. It's just, I guess I'm saying, as someone who's been involved in this piece of product for a long time, and these guys have finally figured out a way to make it financially viable, I would encourage you to support that. And I think I'll stop talking at this point and wait for my next turn. But this is pretty cool what they're doing.
All right, Rick, thanks. Any questions of Rick? All right, thanks, Rick. We'll hear from you later on another application.
You bet.
Christy, anyone else with a hand up in favor of the application?
Not that I see so far, Wade.
Okay, now we'll open it up to anyone who'd like to oppose or anyone who's not sure whether they're opposing or speaking in favor. They just want to talk. Anyone else, raise your hand, please.
One person. Mark, I will promote you to a panelist.
And Mark, once you're promoted, if you could put your video on and we'll have Dale swear you in.
Okay,
I see,
Mark, can you raise
now
your right
you're,
hand?
you're muted. There you go.
Okay. Mark, do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, Mark.
Thank you. I own a couple of buildings in the village and I'm not opposing this. I'm just asking some questions. I'm not sure I fully understood. During the summer hours, where would someone park to take out a pie or any food?
Eddie, I don't know if you want to talk, but there's a parking spot to the right. There's a little window to the right of the door that'll be like a 15-minute.
But that's also,
There's,
I'm sorry, that's also a 9, I'm assuming symmetrically depth piece of property. So that's a 9.5 foot property, depth wise.
what that one is, that one is a little deeper right there. And that's where people have parked.
Because I suppose my concern is a normal parking dimension is, as we said, 9 by 20 or 10 by 18. Most SUVs are 180, 200 inches. So they're 12, 13, as much as 16 feet. I'm trying to understand, is there a dumpster placement? Where would the dumpster be?
There's not a dumpster placement. Eddie's worked out arrangements for garbage. But there is metered parking across the street.
I understand that. What's the dumpster solution?
That's something I've worked out with some neighbors. So I'm all covered there. Thank you. And as far as the parking spot in front, I park my truck there and I'm not hitting the sidewalk as far as that right-hand side. So that's going to take care of anything for something that wants to come quick. But once again, in the summertime, we're really trying to attract the people that are walking traffic, that people are maybe riding bikes and things of that nature. So we don't see as much of an issue of that in the summertime as it's more of a walking area during those months.
But just again, so I understand, the parking on the left is 9.5 feet deep. How much deeper is it on the right?
So we've had our contractor scale that out. On top of my head, I'm not sure the dimensions. I know it does fall under the requirements that needs to be for an actual parking space, though. That I am aware of.
But if it's not 9.5, it's not 19. It's like maybe 10.
I mean, I guess maybe that's a question for the zoning. I do know it is accepted for a parking spot is based on what's measured. It was already passed through the state and the city. So that would be a question for the zoning.
Hey, Rob, can you go back to that picture? You have a picture with a car parked over there.
No, so that is not our property. That's Chuck's right there.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, we would be right to the left of the that where you see those two barriers. Correct.
Hey, Rob, up in the left-hand corner where you see the little clock, the drop-down arrow, and it says Street View. Go ahead and click that. Yeah, click that. And then there you go. You can go back all the way to 2019 and see a vehicle parked there.
Perfect. And that looks like an SUV right there. Excellent. Thank you.
Well, one of the things I was going to mention, and I hesitate, but I think Mark's question raises it. I can tell you, I live easily walkable to where your building is. We've raised 3 kids from birth to the youngest is 20. And every night in our house is like tonight. It's 7 o'clock and someone says, what are we going to have for dinner? And we say, okay, where do you want to go downtown? And we get takeout. We don't walk. We run down. Today was Parkside, and we find a spot somewhere. So I do see, if you have that one spot over there, I do see a fair amount of, I don't know that we're unique. I think there's a lot of people in Chagrin who, while we like to walk and frequently walk, will get in our car and zip in when a last minute decision has been made and pick food up. So I guess, to Mark's question, I'm wondering, I was thinking, well, where am I going to park? Am I just going to go into the lot and walk over here and pick it up and walk back? Am I going to try and zip in front like this? So I do think that you're going to see a fair amount of non-walkers from the village.
Absolutely. And that's where I think the meter parking, the 15-meter parking spots right across on Bell Street come into play. And honestly, if that's anything for an issue, it's more of an issue for me for business, because if it's not convenient, people might do it, but that's something that I'll have to deal with.
Well, I'm worried about that though. I mean, I'm worried about that for you because I know how big the takeout business is for pizza. I just wanted to finish. Can we go back to that drawing for a minute? the other thing that we got to bear in mind is it's really not 9.5 feet from the building because no one's going to park up against the building. So whatever that buffer is, whether it's 6 inches, 9 inches, 12 inches, it's just going to reduce that 9.5 feet. Eddie, you said you have an agreement for a dumpster with someone. Have you, I mean, are you confirmed on that?
I mean, I'm not quite sure what this has to do with the parking, but
Well,
yes.
I'm just trying to think about where a dumpster would go if you don't have an agreement.
Like I said, I do have an agreement. Thank you for your concern. Well, I think for the agenda tonight, this is about the zoning for the parking and our variance.
Yeah, but your hesitance to answer the question gives us concern.
About the dumpster?
Yeah.
Well, this is something I've worked with some other people in the area that quite honestly, this wasn't on the docket tonight. So I'm not going to talk about something without them being aware of the situation.
Hey, Rob, do we ever like, when we're like doing these kind of variances, I understand why it's coming up, I guess, but do we like, actually it has nothing to do with the variance. When we give like a restaurant a permit to operate, do we ask them where their dumpster is going?
If they are proposing a dumpster on the outside, there's establishments that even take the trash with them at the end of the day and don't have a dumpster agreement. So
I only,
There's a
my-
lot.
let me jump in. My only point in asking the question is if that bay on the right-hand side of the door is the bay for the pickup, and it also ends up having to be the bay for the dumpster, you're not going to have a pickup area.
Well, I can answer that
Oh.
question for you. That bay will not be used for a dumpster.
and also all dumpsters would need.
Thank you, Eddie.
Enclosure.
You're welcome.
And an enclosure would have to go through the approval process.
Right.
All right. Any other questions, Mark?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. I think I saw that there's another
Can I ask you a
person
question
raised.
now? I guess I'm also getting confused on why we're talking about the parking spots, because that's really not part of the variance that we're talking about today. We're not talking about the size of the parking spots. If you want to use that space for parking, that's not part of our variance we're reviewing today. Am I right, Rob?
It's looking at what spaces are available that are currently provided with the building. So it's related to the discussion, but the size of the spaces, there's already existing parking there. They're not proposing new parking or
Right,
additional
okay.
parking.
But
So-
also, part of this variance, in the first part is that for whatever time of year, the variance is needed because all parking spaces will be removed for the patio. Are they proposing to keep one at all times of the 16 required?
Yes.
One at all times.
So
required.
one at all times. That's the only thing that we're talking, it doesn't have enough space, and apparently it does since it exists today. But I just want to make sure that, because I'm working on the motion, obviously, that the size of the parking spot has nothing to do with the variance that we're talking about today.
That's actually not correct, Rachel.
Okay,
If you look at the zoning review letter item 4 on the continuation of parking,
yeah,
that's what's affected here, and that's what you would need to grant a variance on, because those spaces would be displaced. And I know you say they're not, and that's a finding you can make and grant relief on that basis. But based on the plans presented and the prior use of the property, those were parking spaces. So that's why Rob put that requirement in there for a variance.
no, I understand that, but that's the continuation of parking. They're asking for a variance because they are removing the parking.
Well, they're asking for a variance for parking because they need 16 spaces for the outdoor dining. And
Right,
that's the main parking variance, but the continuation section is also part of the variance.
right, because they're removing the parking.
Right.
Yeah,
To the-
but it has
to the
nothing to
extent
do
that
with
it
whether the parking is 10 feet by 20 or 9 feet by the one spot. I just want to make sure the size of the parking spot that remains is not in this variance.
That's correct.
Okay.
What I agreed.
Can I ask a question relative to the outdoor dining and the setback, the requirement that we have under 1138.05 to grant A2 to grant a variance of 20 feet? When the village determined that it would lease this parcel, that it was okay to use the parcel they're leasing for outdoor dining, was there discussion of alcohol in the park as part of that discussion? And did I
Well,
just miss it?
Yeah, there's two parts to it. Remember, the 20-foot setback is only for the central shopping district.
Right.
And the lease allows alcoholic beverages to be consumed out there, but you can't have a bar on that lease parcel.
Okay.
Bars inside the building.
Yes, the bar isn't, well, it's not a bar, the cooler
bar.
is inside the building.
Right, but people can consume alcohol adjacent to the park right outside there. That's all I mean,
Because of the terms of the lease, yes.
Correct.
I mean, we've had such issues with, where we're gonna consume alcohol in the village.
Maybe we can have Oktoberfest on the side here.
It's a really tiny Oktoberfest.
Yeah,
Don't go there, please.
we won't. It's only a joke. Okay, any further question? I guess, Mark, we let Mark go. And I know there was another hand raised. Christy?
There was. I have a call-in participant, Donna Murphy. Dale, obviously, we can't get her on video. She had some technical difficulties with the Zoom link, so she used the call-in option.
Okay. We know Donna Murphy. I can swear her in, and she can be subject to cross-examination.
Okay. Donna,
Okay,
can you give us a sound check?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Thank
Thank you,
Okay.
Christy.
Donna, I'm going to take it for granted that you're raising your right hand for me. And
It
do you
is up.
do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Donna, you're up. Floor is yours.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm not calling to say I am against this project, but my concerns are obvious, being the owner of the plaza and the lot in question. I bear no ill will against Ms. Weinfertner and Eddie. I think it's a wonderful concept. Ms. Weinfertner just reached out to me today. This is the first time we've spoken. So we really did not have much of a chance to, have a conversation about my concerns. Much of what she is speaking of as far as the open spaces on Bell Road, granted, yes, that is correct, but we are coming out of COVID and the whole village as a whole has been quite empty. My concern is when we open up again and restrictions are lifted, we've got Pub Fredo coming, we've got all the outside dining coming back, and we're adding another 56 seats, although it is seasonal. My concern is obvious, as I'm going to be the impact, the one impacted the most due to the proximity of both Pub Fredo and Eddie's establishment. And, if we continue down the line, yours truly and Aurelia and Flipside, and we go on and on. So my concern is just that. What is the solution? I don't know, but that I'm speaking my voice. And, I've had this conversation many times before in the past. My obligation is to my tenants. I have to supply ample parking. And when it's constantly compromised, I hear the flack from the tenants. No one else does. And it's, that is my concern. And, it has been, and it will go on to be until we find a better solution to parking. Prior to COVID, with the patrolling that Ralph and John have done, it has helped. But then again, we did not have the Pub Fredo, or Grove Hill had been closed. So that's a factor that's going to come into play too, as well. That it's another component here that I don't know that we're taking into consideration. So I will quiet for now, and we can discuss if you'd like. Or
Thank you. Do you know when Pub Fredo is scheduled to open?
I do not. All I know is that the sign went from opening spring of 2021 to summer of 2021. So I'm really not certain when they're due to open.
And are they
are making
planning a
progress.
full menu, sit down? I mean, one thing Eddie's talking about is a higher turnover restaurant. Do you know what exactly the cuisine at Pub Fredo is intended to be?
I think it is pretty much a family bar, you know, a pub fare, if you will, that has a full sit-down bar, and I don't want to liken it to yours truly, but fairly similar. But I do know that their location in Concord, which I did look on their website, it has obviously the full bar and you know, a moderately priced menu as well.
There was always a restaurant there for many, many, many years, though. That's not a new build. It's just been empty for the last 18 months, but it's not like it's a new restaurant that never was there many years past. We've seen the traffic flow in that area.
Right. And during the lunch hour, I have no issues with the dinner hour, truly, because most everyone is closed down. Heinen's has their upfront parking, but from the hours of, you know, the lunch hour, 11:30 to 2 o'clock, it's going to be tough. It will be tough. Those spaces on Bell Road will be utilized as they are every summer, you know, when people come to town. Those spaces will be utilized, whether they be for Amy's spot or someone else, you know.
Thank you. Questions for Donna from the board? Well, I'm sorry you're having technical difficulties, but thank you for at least calling in. We really appreciate your comments. Christy, anybody else who is raising a hand?
We do have another attendee. Danny, I will promote you to a panelist. Remember to get sworn in prior to speaking.
There we go.
All right,
Danny,
we
can
see
you
you.
can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Danny, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Just by way of introduction, my name is Danny Reyes, and I am the manager of 23 Bell Street LLC, which is the legal entity that owns basically the Chuck's Beverage building and surrounding land. So just by to give you an understanding where that is, I basically own everything from the public areas on Bell Street to the river, from south to north, and from west to east. I go from the property line of the 13 Bell Street building, I call it the Mario's building, up to, for give or take about 200 feet of lineal frontage along the river and Bell Street, up to almost Jason's. I own most of the parking area between Chuck's Beverage and Jason's. I think there's a line there you can kind of see where I think I have about 8 or 9 of the spaces, and Jason has, I think, about 2 or 3. So I own most of the property basically between the Mario's building and Jason's. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to welcome the Italian restaurant to the community. I'm really rooting for you guys. The building's been vacant a long time, and I'm rooting for your success, and welcome to the community. Just by way of history, you know, in addition to owning this property and other properties, you know, my main business is I own a company called Tribeca Real Estate Corporation, and I've been in the real estate brokerage business for about 31 years, 20 of which with my own company. And a majority of my work, I really specialize in retail and restaurant shopping center leasing. So I represent shopping center owners and landlords, and I represent retailers and restaurants in search of their locations. So a lot of times I, represent restaurants in their site acquisition phase, lease negotiations, et cetera. So I guess I kind of have a history with restaurant real estate. As I said, I'm rooting for the success of this business, but I wanted to talk a little bit about really the basis about why we're all here today, which is for the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider these variance requests. And I'm looking at a printout I have here of a lot of the reasons and basis for whether or not that should be approved and taken into consideration. I think there's 6 or 7 of those. And, the first one on the list was not self-created. I had the opportunity to review the application that the property owner filled out. And I think repeatedly, one of the main themes over the reasoning for their variance request was, I think, and they answered this in 3 or 4 of the questions, was that, they didn't know about this. They didn't know about the zoning. They didn't know about the requirements. Well, I think that's probably the definition of it being self-created. I think obviously the board knows that, lack of knowledge about how your property can and cannot be used is certainly not a reason to be granted. I'm sorry that I'm looking over. I don't usually zoom from my laptop and the video cameras to one side. But it's not really a reason to why a variance should be approved in this case or any other case. And I really think it's really a very unusual precedent that the board would set if they would grant a variance based on an application that's filled with, the owner's self-admitted, lack of knowledge about this. I mean, zoning information is a public record. It's available to anybody. People aren't forced to buy properties. They have information available to them. In my business, for the last 25, 30 years in acquiring properties, what my clients and I do when we're looking to acquire properties is, we look at properties, we analyze them on a multitude of litmus tests, including the zoning and what we can put on the property. And that's done through public records requests, talking to the local entities in the cities or villages or the governmental entities. And a lot of times we make the decision that, hey, unfortunately, this isn't the deal to do. It's just not going to be able to work out. But certainly we do that based on making informed decisions. And so I guess, that first litmus test is, what's this self-created? I think that's an obvious one. And, and looking through some of these other, conditions, a lot of them, are based on, hardships. What is our hardship if we're not granted this variance? And I think, again, there may be some self-identified hardships, but that doesn't mean that those hardships weren't, self-created. I mean, it's really tough to say, well, I didn't know about the zoning, and then come back and say, well, I'm going to have a hardship. I mean, maybe if you knew about the zoning in advance or earlier in the process made these requests, I mean, to be honest, again, I'm rooting for these guys. I hope it's successful, but they've owned this property for 3.5 years and already signed a lease. You can make whatever argument you want about whether it's a hardship or not, but again, I think it's a dangerous precedent that the city is setting if somebody comes in after they've owned the property, signed a lease, under construction, getting ready, to open, and saying, hey, we didn't know, or we can't do this, and we're on the 98-yard line. And I know, listen, I'm not going to give a lesson on how to do real estate, but again, in the 25, 30 years that I apply to, for zoning approvals for tenants of mine or my clients do, we do all that stuff. We sign a lease that's contingent upon approvals. We don't sign a lease ahead of time and saying we hope we get it. We know what we have, and then maybe we'll try to go in and get a variance. But we know at the worst case scenario, what you get is what you get. So I guess the other thing is, I've been listening to this meeting, and I guess, we're talking about parking, but I haven't heard the applicant, give any concrete information about, where, do they have arrangements with other property owners on where to park? Where are they going to park? I mean, it just seems like it's very vague. So I do have a few questions. Initially, I'll kind of bunch the ones for Dale Markowitz, ahead of time. This is just, I'm just curious, because I know that there was a big to-do in the village when the previous owners announced that they were going to, do a lease with the village on the parcel in question, the strip between the park and the building. And then, it was put on for referendum. And does the city, I'm sorry, you said that the village recently altered that lease. Does the village, I'm asking this of Dale Markowitz, does the village have the authority to alter the original scope of that lease, or are they obligated to certain, covenants that were in that original referendum and then, cannot be altered unless, another referendum occurs?
We didn't really alter the lease. There was an amendment to the lease that was done when the transfer of title took place.
Okay.
We acknowledged the assignment, and we haven't changed those basic provisions.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought earlier in the meeting, somebody said that you changed the lease. So maybe that's what they were referring to.
Well, there was some amendments, but nothing that the voters had approved. But the answer is, the village could take action after there's a referendum to allow a use to amend the lease, and if the voters don't like that, then they could referendum again. But
Okay.
that's not what happened here.
Okay, again, it was a question.
Sure.
I'm curious. I guess the other question is, there's been a lot of talking, and I know that Mark, who called in earlier, spent a lot of time talking about the parking, and I've repeatedly heard acknowledgements from several parties that, including representatives of the village on this call, that and people on the board, that the parking spaces do not conform to the standard of 180 square foot, 9 by 20 or 8, or 10 by 100 or 10 by 18 or whatever. So I guess my question is, how can people park there? Like the village hires a full-time person who drives around in that small car to monitor Miss Murphy's lot and other areas of the village to make sure that people are in compliance. And if they're not, if their meter's expired, or if they're parking somewhere for too long, or they don't have a permit, they get a ticket. So I guess my question, Mr. Markowitz, is how can people park there if it's self-admittedly not, it's not a real parking space? I mean, not only that, but if you have cars that are sticking out into the sidewalk in front of that building because it's not a viable parking space, how are people going to walk down the sidewalk of Bell Street? They're going to have to walk, into the street to get around the building, and it presents a liability issue. So I'm wondering why we're even having the conversation that these are parking spaces if self-admittedly you said that they don't conform to what's considered a space. And will this be monitored if in the chance that it's allowed, will this be monitored by the village and the police department, to make, for the safety of the village, residents, commuters, patrons, et cetera?
That was a long question, and I didn't think it was a legal question. It's really, what you're asking is something that the board has to make a determination on. I don't want to invade their province here. But as I understand the application and the site plan, they are not asking us to count those 3 spaces for the purposes of approving the outdoor dining. And I think that due to the complication that part of it's on private property and part of it's on public property, I don't think we should be counting it as spaces for the summertime. But from the testimony that Eddie gave, he said that he was able to park in that area without his truck sticking over on the sidewalk. So they do have that evidence.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, but if several people admitted that is not a 180 square foot parking space, which is required. So how can you let people park there if I know that that's not the purpose, but this is a zoning board and parking is part of zoning. So from a legal standpoint, how can you let people park there then? How can, he said, the owner of the restaurant said, this one space will always be available for people to pull up and park and pick up their to-go orders. So
Well,
is he
again,
saying that he's going to violate?
Yeah, I don't want to invade the province of the board, but I don't think anybody testified that they don't meet the 9 by 20 or the 10 by 18. The spaces haven't been marked yet. So,
well, can't that easily be done? Because with all due respect, that is not 9 feet by 20 feet. If you go 20 feet out from, and we're really, like Mark said earlier, the caller it's really not 20 feet from the building, because nobody can park right up to the building, especially in this case, because you have bollards there.
There is 20 feet if you include the space that's in the right of way. So from the edge of the, there's distance between the back of the sidewalk to the edge of the property line that's in the village right of way. It's 20 feet. It's almost like 50-50, probably on that very end one that's closest to your property.
So you're saying people are allowed to park in the right of way?
People park in the right of way all the time. I mean,
yeah,
it's
Bell Street
and if
is a
we're going
right
to
of
start
way.
arguing about the pedantics of where you can and cannot park, the Ohio Department of Transportation says you can't park on a bridge. So we can talk about kind of the pedantics of where you can and cannot park, but there's kind of this little bit of, it's a parking spot. It's always been a parking spot, a little bit of grandfathered in. So there's a lot that we'll start talking about parking spots.
Well, let me shortcut this. That is not one of the issues before the Board of Zoning Appeals tonight. I understand you believe it is an issue, but it's not part of the variance requests that are before the board tonight. That's really an administration issue between the police department, the chief administrative officer, and the property owner.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. It appears to me that obviously there's going to be a big takeout business here. I appreciate that, the owner realizes that, he needs, in order for him to have a viable concept, if people aren't, willing to, park a block away and pick up a pizza, that's going to be on him. But I think the reality and one of the litmus tests on approval or disapproval for zoning variances is, will this create a hardship or negatively affect neighboring property owners? And, I will tell you that if people can't find a space, I'm not talking about the patio that next between the park and the building. That's something that, you'll make a decision on and we'll accept it. But I am strongly opposed to to having tables added in front of the building, because in an already difficult parking situation, in reality, people are going to park on my lot. And I have 2 spaces just to the east of this building, and I have 9 spaces in a parking lot to the east of my building. And, you know, I want to be a good neighbor, but my number one obligation has to be to my property and the success of my tenants. Chuck's Beverage has been a member of this community for 75 years and a legendary tenant. And I have office space upstairs. I have 3 tenants who have employees, and my obligation has to be for them. And if I have to police the parking, and if I lose parking to the next door neighbors, that's going to negatively impact my property. And again, I'm rooting for the success, but I think for the village to grant additional tables in front of the building is not within the original scope of what the plans were for this property initially. And it's something that, that the tenant should have known and the owner should have known, going in and not be surprised of. And I just think it sets a very difficult precedent for the board to grant a variance on something that doesn't pass the litmus test on hardship and doesn't pass, the litmus test on that this wasn't, self-created, and because I think in the future, they're going to have to grant variances for others who are going to have their hands out for that. So
let me try to respond to one thing. So, because I know the board's going to have this in their heads when they hear you say that. None of these variances are what we call use variances. They're all area variances. So the standard is not whether there's a hardship, it's whether there are practical difficulties. And one of the factors that the Supreme Court set for practical difficulties is whether the property owner acquired the property with knowledge of the restrictions. So that's why that comes up on the application. So whether anything is self-created or not is not one of the factors they consider. However, you did make the point earlier, you combined hardship with the impact on the neighboring properties, and that is one of the criteria that the Supreme Court set out in what we call the Duncan standards. This board's heard it, hundreds of times. They know these factors, but for those who are listening and those who may hear this after tonight, we just want to clarify that so they understand these are practical difficulty variances, and the Duncan factors are what will apply tonight.
yeah. Okay, well, I'll just say, I've tried to be a good neighbor. I want to continue to be a good neighbor, but they haven't even opened, and I am constantly policing my lot for people associated with that property who are parking on there, including the contractors that have been in and out of that building for the last year or so, or actually 3 years, saying, I'm sorry, but this is private parking. And I guess my concern is they haven't even opened and I've already had a problem. What's the village granting a variance, adding more people coming to the building and as it relates to taking away what you say are additional parking spaces in front. And I know it's going to happen. And, I'll tell you, I know that I respect that, that the property owner said that Bell Street isn't used as a parking area as much as the rest of the village. But I think, and Ms. Murphy alluded to it as well, I mean, on a busy Thursday through Sunday in the warm weather months, it's very difficult enough, I don't have to tell you, to find a spot anywhere in downtown Chagrin Falls. I mean, my wife and kids and I came down here recently on a nice evening, and Chuck's Beverage had some type of event going on, and I got the last parking space in my own lot. And if that was taken up, I would, as the owner of the building, I wouldn't have even been able to park here. So, I mean, with all due respect, parking and it has been and remains and will continue to be a major issue, not only in downtown Chagrin Falls, but on Bell Street as well. And I think the board's approval of the addition of the patio request in front of the building is certainly going to add to that. And just, kind of in closing, when somebody wants to pick up a pizza, and, I have young kids, and, they don't want to park 2 blocks away and get out the stroller and walk, across the 2 streets to get a pizza and bring it back to their car. They're going to say, oh, we'll just park in Chuck's lot. That's right next door. People do. We have to police it all the time. And this is not going to make it any easier. And I have to make my building and my tenants my number one priority because they pay the rent, and that enables me to have success on the property. So that's it.
Appreciate your comments very much, Danny. Thank you. Any
Thank
questions for Danny from the board? Okay, I see hands raised. Christy, is that you?
Yes. Eddie has been patient. He raised his hand midway through Danny's comments. Eddie, would you still care to comment?
Yeah, no, Danny, we haven't officially met, so it's nice to meet you, and thank you for putting all these things of concern.
Thanks, welcome to the community.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think your concerns are any business owner's concern, and my intentions are not to have anybody park in your lot, as you have signs up that are private parking, and just as you said, you always had issues of people parking there not allowed. I don't know what changes for any business being there or not if you're already having those issues. As far as my issues, as far as pickup, that's really my business concern. So I appreciate your concern, but it really doesn't have anything to do with your actual parking spaces because they're not allowed to park there. And I am well aware of that. So you're not going to have to worry. I'm not going to let guests park there. I'm not going to tell them they can park there. And if they do park there, I mean, you have that whole right to tow somebody. And I would never take that away from you, as that's your business. So you really don't have to worry about me parking there, my employees parking there. If that ever does happen, and I know it, I will make sure it comes to a complete stop. I'll have that in my employee handbook where employees where they cannot park. That will be designated in the actual physical employee handbook that will be given out to them when they're hired. So you should not have to worry about any of those issues as far as that. As far as parking in the city, like you said, it's always been an issue with that, even without our building there. So, I mean, if it seems like it's more becoming a burden to you, just like it's going to be a burden to any other business owner, including myself, with parking in the area. So these are things that we're all trying to do as a community together. And I think as neighbors now, and you said you want us to succeed and we want you to succeed, I'm really sure and hopeful that we can work together and figure the things out as they come into fruition, just as any new neighbor.
Eddie, is your restaurant viable if you don't have outdoor seating?
No, and that's the problem. So I need to have outdoor seating. If you look at the National Restaurant Association right now, the reason why restaurants are succeeding is because of outdoor patios. Now, if you look at all other cities, even cities in Cleveland, Lakewood, surrounding areas, parking lots, streets have become patio just to expand that dining area for customers. Now, you can say COVID's coming to an end, but that doesn't mean it really is. Like, COVID's still out there. The mandates, you know, are still going to be a place where it's going to be up to people to wear masks. People are still going to feel more comfortable sitting outside than they are inside. So all these things go into the structure of having a successful business. So to put all this work into something and to not, you know, have a beautiful space that we have with this patio, and it just, I'm not sure if that really makes sense. And another thing I'd like to note is Danny kind of mentioned about, you know, looking into, you know, what the city allows with paperwork and everything like that. Well, Amy, Ms. Weinfurt, she bought this property prior to the changes. So in 2009, you said 3 years ago, in 2019, the changes were made to have, as the architect says, where prior to that, you could have a patio without additional parking. So to say that we didn't do our due diligence isn't necessarily true. We didn't think it was a problem because when that lot was purchased, that was not going to be a problem.
That's true. Yep. And I also want to address the fact that he's had to chase people off his property. The contractors that have worked on that building have been extraordinarily polite. They've been extraordinarily, yes, they have. So I take issue with the fact that he's had to chase people off that property. Maybe somebody parked there by accident and moved immediately, but in terms of it has been a very polite crew.
Eddie, are you going to be selling beer and wine to go with your pizzas?
Yes, that will definitely be an option where people can take that to go. There's going to be online ordering, there's going to be carry out. Just as, you know, with the new liquor license, that's all been grandfathered in now, where with your liquor license, you can now sell to go.
And again, this is a low key, there's not a bar, it's not a place to sort of come drinking. It's addition to. And the expectation now is outdoor dining. Things have changed.
Christy, I saw that you said another hand has been raised. Is that?
Can I respond to something? Is that okay?
Sure.
You know, listen, I don't want to turn this into a debate, but the fact of the matter is I've repeatedly had to ask not only contractors not to park on my property, but I once had to ask a contractor to not walk on my roof to get access to their roof. So, you know, I listen, Amy, with all due respect, you know, my office is here. I'm here 5-6 days a week, a lot of times. And I'm the one who sees it, and I'm the one who's asked to ask these people. And I know that you can't control everything when you're not here, just as you and Eddie in the future won't be able to control your customers. So I'm not blaming this on you. I'm just saying the reality is we've already had to police this as a result of activity in the building. And I'm very concerned about having to do it further. And just for the record, I have no issue with the village-owned parcel that's passed with the referendum and outdoor seating there. That's up for the board to decide, well, relative to the variances requested. My opposition is for the additional variance for the property in front of the building. That's what I have an issue, because if you say, you know, they're parking spaces, they're parking spaces, and people are going to park there. I guess I can't dispute that if that's allowed, but it's just making it much more difficult. And the reality is, people are going to park in my lot, and it's going to create a hardship for my tenants and for me as the building owner. So.
I can also show the pictures now if anybody wants to see them from this Saturday evening at the dinner hour.
I don't know that it's necessary. I think we all are familiar with the parking issues in the village. So thank you.
Okay, but it shows a lot of open parking. That's all.
Christy, there was another hand or another
Yes.
attendee?
Yes, I've promoted someone who entered their name as user. If you would please unmute and start your camera and be sworn in by our law director, please. And we
Yeah,
will need your first and last name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry, I'm new to this, but my name is Kurt Hebel.
Kurt, are you able to enable your camera?
You're talking to a Neanderthal. What button would I start video? Or?
Yes, exactly. Start
You're
video
on
is
it.
the correct button.
There I am.
There you go.
Look at that. Even pen-toting Neanderthals can learn electricity.
Okay, user, you're up. You need to be sworn in by the law director, Mr. User.
Okay, can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. And I don't know how to put my name other than user, but I am Kurt Hebel, and current and have been caretaker of the legendary Valley destination known as Chuck's for 25, coming up 26 years in this June. The testimony is Donna of the Plaza is not the only one that will suffer any handicap or hardship with the proposal for parking. With high volume events, Blossom Time, Art by the Falls, even just lovely seasonal great weather times, I have to be the parking police for my own lot, often at some expense, to put somebody out there to actually guard the parking. That's neither here nor there. Mark Nasca made a good point as far as carryout goes. Any high volume or at least potentially profitable venue such as Eddie is proposing is going to need more than one carryout spot, plain and simple. Yeah, I just don't see how one spot, if your order's not ready and another one is, one spot's going to cut it. But my concluding comment is, I feel that the loss of any parking to that creates a need for more parking should not be allowed. And we're going to eliminate some parking to create a need for more parking. Doesn't make sense. There was a picture posted earlier that showed 5 parking spots in front of the 13 Bell Street property, all within the, I guess, allowable parking. There was access to the sidewalk. And I think that we should not allow any front set seating to take away parking, plain and simple.
Okay, Kurt, any questions of Kurt?
Those parking that was in the picture of the 5, one was in front of the door. And after we bought the property and when we had contractors coming to work on the building, we had to talk to the neighboring people, so Kurt and Danny Reyes, and ask them because it was their employees primarily that were parking in front of that building.
No, we don't need that parking. We have plenty of access next to your building, what we call the hole. We park 2 or 3 cars in there. We have plenty of access. I have 5 employees. One's fortunately a walker, and there's only 4 needs for parking. We've not used your parking spot, nor have we needed to.
So there was never any of your employees that used any of the parking in front of our building?
No, Amy Weinfurtner, no.
It's very interesting that all of a sudden then we had nobody parking in front of the building after we had a discussion. It's just very coincidental.
You might have some other business neighbors that have utilized that spot. Amy, I've been at this location for 25 years. I've witnessed all kinds of parking scenarios and who's parking where. I can assure you, nobody at Chuck's Fine Wines has been using your parking, nor do we need to.
Okay, any other questions for Kurt?
It's not really a question. It's more, it seems like this is more becoming a neighborly issue where you know, that's their business problem. Just like Danny said earlier, I have my own business problems. Well, that's for me as my entrepreneur to figure out mine. And, you know, as far as the parking goes, we're not going to park there as our employees. I can just guarantee you that. And it seems like they've always had to monitor those parking spots. So they're going to just have to continue to do that. And if they see somebody coming into my restaurant that's parking their space, they can ticket them or tow them. And there's nothing I would say about it. That's their business. And I would let my customers know that is not parking for my restaurant. It's really as simple as that.
Christy, is there anybody else in the audience who is patiently waiting who would like to speak?
I see no further hands raised at this time.
Well, I'm grateful for the robust debate discussion. We appreciate everybody appearing and expressing your concerns. Board, are there any final questions that you need answered before we move to a motion in the affirmative and a vote aye or nay? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
Wade, can I ask, are you going to do each of these separately or are you going to do them collectively?
I was going to propose that we do it collectively.
I think we should do it collectively because of the parking being so related with the multiple ordinances. I just feel I was going to do it collectively.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. Wish me luck. Okay, I'd like to make a motion on behalf of a variance submitted in regards to the two parcels located at 13 Bell Street involving the addition of outdoor dining. The parcel in discussion is actually two parcels. One that's the restaurant, which is located in the central shopping district, with the additional parcel where the outdoor dining will be added in the park zoning district. When you have outdoor dining, section 113804A2 requires that the outdoor service shall be limited to seating areas which are not in the local setbacks, and the required minimum front yard setback for this for the building in the central shopping districts is 20 feet. Because of where the outdoor seating will be in the front of the building, within that entire setback, the variance needed will be 20 feet. And that is a variance request number one. In regards to the Duncan factors for this variance on 113805A2, the discussion on, and we'll combine this with the others, but the discussion on where that patio needs to be put in the front of the building and not just on the side building. If it was on the side of the building, it would be in the park zoning district and not be in the setback in this requirement in the central shopping district. But in discussing that, if you did not have that additional space, then that would be left for parking space in front of the building, creating not only an aesthetic issue for people attending the restaurant, but also some access and egress issues. You want multiple egresses in and out of that building, both on the side patio and on the front. And if you keep that parking spot, it starts to close off the traffic flow in and out of the restaurant of the people attending. It also does not play into the good aesthetics if you're sitting next to that area and having a parking go in and out. So the additional of bringing that additional seating, it also is a very small seating spot, only adding 8 spots, I believe, in that front area, and not adding enough to really, change it into anything else. And removing those parking spots, again, creates a more aesthetic feel. So the discussion on whether or not they needed that front was made to address the issues and the feasible, obviated through other methods. They've talked about not having it, and for all those reasons that I listed there, adding that front patio made the most sense to make this fit in not only with the aesthetics of the building, but also the feel and enjoyment of being at the restaurant. It also helps development, the delivery of government services by having the multiple egress for emergencies and fire code. And the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood is met better to open that space up. And rather than having cars there parked, you can see that the architecture of the building that's been rehabbed will continue to be maintained rather than having all of those aesthetics hidden by the parking in front. To continue with the variance needed, section 114102A2 requires that parking facilities shall be provided for any additional parking requirement resulting from an increase in outdoor seating in the central shopping zone. Again, because the patio is going to be in front of the building that's in the central shopping zone, this variance comes into play. Because they're adding seating out there, there needs to be additional parking, and they will not be having any additional parking. Section 114102B1 requires that parking facilities shall be provided for the entire use when a new use is established in all zoning districts outside the central shopping district. Because of the parking zone district on the other parcel will have the outdoor seating, the parking facilities need to be provided to address the 32 the 22 outdoor seats. The parking requirements that will apply for the new outdoor area in both parking and in both zoning districts require 16 spots based on those two requirements, because section 114105 sets the parking requirements that one parking space per 50 square feet or one parking space for each of the two seats, including outdoor areas, whichever is greater. And based on this calculation, the 16 parking spaces would be required, and none of these parking spaces will be provided. So the variance is material in the sense that it's 100% variance. In discussing the continuance of the parking and the variance required, the third variance is to section 114103A that requires that all off-street parking facilities shall continue unobstructed in operation and shall not be reduced below the required size. Because the proposed dining outdoor area will displace those 3 parking spots most of the year or during the seasonal operation of the year, the variance would be needed for this section, since the off-street parking facilities will not be unobstructed and be removed. And finally, the last variance, which is not related to parking, is to the river buffer. Section 115102 establishes that 120-foot river buffer. The entire area of this restaurant, including the outdoor patio, is in the river buffer. I'll address this variance, and the reasons to grant this variance is because essentially nothing would ever be able to be done with this building if this was the case and that building was in use in the river buffer prior, but any adjustments or up and changes to a building like this that's in the river buffer needs this variance to be granted. And it's in very normal course that the BZA has awarded this variance in all properties that are existing around the river, in the river buffer, for any property that has been located in this area. Otherwise, these properties might as well be demolished and removed, since if we never granted this variance. Back to the parking, we'll talk about the 16 spaces and the continuation, and the reasons of the variance should be given. Yes, the variance is substantial. However, we talked at length today about the reasonable return. This building has been empty for a very long time, and whether the outdoor patio would be created adding 22 spots or the indoor restaurant would stay alone, you still need to address the issue of parking in this area. It is a very unique building. Many points were brought up today about the impact on the village, and we deal with this with every restaurant that comes into the village. There are multiple takeout places in our village. It is a destination place, not a destination restaurant. Nothing is in this village. It's a very much every man for themselves type of parking scenario. We deal with all the new restaurants that come in the other area outside the central shopping district for M Italian, for the new restaurant 17 River, and the new restaurant that's going in across the street. It continues to be a discussion that planning and zoning has addressed with the police, as well as any variances on this board. It is not unusual or out of normal course nor does it set precedent to approve such variances when dealing with parking for restaurants within this central shopping district. It is completely normal course. The essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially enhanced if a vacant building that's been sitting for many, many years could actually get put to use. And really many of the negatives we heard tonight from concerns, we're really talking about the addition of the 22 patio and taking away the parking spots. And the reality is 2 parking spots in the village of dozens of restaurants and a lot of different parking alternatives and walking and other modes of transportation alternatives certainly provide opportunities to give a chance to a building that's been empty for a really long time. And so the idea to try to turn it into something and risk the chance that no parking means no customers is a chance this business is willing to take. The variance would not adversely affect governmental deliveries and services as they've addressed some of the fire code and emergency access to this building and to the patio location should there need to be delivery. The planning and zoning, as well as the police and fire, will be reviewing a parking plan if there's a parking spot that is painted and permitted in that area, and that is not a responsibility of this variance. But this variance itself does not alter or harm governmental services in any way. The property owner did purchase the property with the knowledge of the zoning restriction, and the owner has sat on this property for a long time trying to work on architecture plans for how something could be turned into a useful business. Many owners prior and even during this ownership with different ideas have reached out to the city for other variances in the past that never came through to fruition because of just the plans falling through. But it's very clear in the application that the owner says that they knew that this building had challenges, were willing to work through the inherited challenges through the code. So there are some additional variances that get complicated. So there are a couple of the variances, such as the river buffer that were new to them. But the challenges with the access and the parking are something that they're trying to be creative by asking for these variances. We've talked about whether or not this could be feasibly obviated in other ways. We talked about limiting the outdoor seating. We're talking about 22 seats for 6 months out of the year. In my opinion, and on many discussions that we've had on the Board of Zoning, we've had much greater impact, much more volume restaurants that have come into this village with much greater variances within a period of 5 years. And I'm talking before COVID. So if we look at a fully stocked business district, we're looking at, we're really talking about the 22 added seats, which is not impactful in the overall plan for the whole village. The spirit and intent of the code, I think, would be observed as well in order to grant these variances for the parking, because otherwise no business can ever be here and no business will ever be able to operate there, and the building might as well be abandoned at this point. So now is the time to support the variance, to grant the variance for the spirit of the zoning code, for the spirit of the neighborhood, and for the chance for a business to operate in the village of Chagrin Falls. And for those reasons, I submit this variance.
Second.
Lisa Kramer, second. So roll call to Rob, please.
Aki.
So I think that this variance is extremely substantial. You're asking us to grant you a variance, really, when I look at it, for 16 parking spaces, but you're submitting a plan that removes 3 from your own property. I think the character of the neighborhood is going to be degraded because of this, because there's already a parking problem with the local businesses that are right adjacent to this, and this is going to make it even worse. I think it's negatively going to affect government services and delivery, because your plan includes blocking off access to a property that is owned but leased to the property owners, but it is owned by the village, and we need to be able to use that to access the Lowhead Dam that's in there. So you've got balusters and pots that will have to be moved anytime the village needs to get any piece of equipment in there. And I think that this is really a great example of a self-created variance. I mean, you've taken a situation, you've made it worse, and then requested for a variance. And so for all of those reasons, I'm going to vote no.
Freshman Johnson.
So I agree that the variance is extremely substantial. However, I mean, on paper, if you look at it individually, and we are only looking at this variance and never think about all the other variances that come across our board, in the sense that there are way more significant material variances that have come across this board that truly, really, do something that we've never done before, set a precedence that really can be played in the future by other things. But this, we always talk about the unique scenarios and the unique properties that exist in this town and what this town is really about. And I believe that this is one of those properties. And I believe that this variance, whether we grant it today or come back in 5 years after the building's been vacant for another 5 years and talk about what somebody's going to do then, I mean, you're really talking about either demolishing this building and walking away and saying, you know what, I guess it's just going to be empty for forever, or giving somebody a chance to prove to the city that this can work and that it's a walking town. People find parking spots, people walk from where they live. And I've lived here my whole life, so I'm not naive to understand that there are sometimes challenges for parking, but it works itself out. And I mean, I've seen people park right in front of the neighbor here many times, sticking their car into Bell Street. So to say that there was going to be dangerous cars, on this part is, it happens at Chuck's, it happens at Jason's, it happens at M Italian, it happens at 17 River, and somehow the city goes on. And it brings people to the city. It gives people options and I really think we're forced here to say, hey, you either give somebody a chance, and I don't think in the grand scheme of all of Sherman Falls that these 3 parking spots are going to change the face of this village or change the face of the business near them. I do not think it'll degrade the neighborhood. I think it'll absolutely upgrade it. It will make it aesthetically pleasing. It'll close that eyesore of a building that's been there for 15 years and make it usable space. And I think it'll add to the flow of the park there that people tend not to use because there's nothing to do over there. So for those reasons, I want to sit here and give this operation a chance. If there's issues with, legally doing things that they shouldn't be done, I believe in the police, I believe in the zoning committee, and the city will do the right thing to step in. But I'm willing to grant this variance and give this business a chance to make this village a little better in that area. So I vote yes.
Frick.
Well, if you've never been before us, we typically don't run for 2.5 hours on one application, and I don't mean that in a negative way. There's obviously a lot going on here. We are a small village. We live right on top of each other. We work right on top of each other. Danny and Kurt and Donna are certainly pillars of the business community. Amy and Eddie seem like wonderful people, and they're trying to do something with a building that's sat there forever. To me, I mean, for probably a period of 15 years or so, and the testimony was that when Amy bought the building, the planning and zoning code had been changed so that there were no parking considerations in the central business district. And it was in part because how the heck can you find, how's a new restaurant going to find new spaces? Unless you bus people in from 2 miles away, it's impossible to do. Now that changed in 2019. And again, the testimony was they bought the property before that. So where I come down is, we look at the factors that are given to us by our village, by the Supreme Court. And there's a whole bunch of things that weigh in many directions. We've all, so far, 3 of us have said that these variances are substantial. They are. The essential character of the neighborhood, to me, is a critical one. Now, it weighs in both directions in the same same number 3. I believe having a functional business in that very visible building would be a wonderful thing. We've had testimony that 2 businesses are concerned about parking in their lots, which I think is a real issue. I look at the factor, though, the character of the neighborhood with a dilapidated building that we're finally going to get something to move into. I don't know what else they can possibly put. I think Rachel's right. Unless we just knock the building down, I don't know that we'll ever find a solution. So, I mean, Eddie and Amy are on notice that there's a parking problem. You're on notice that if your patrons start parking next door, they're going to be towed. They're going to, nothing good's going to come. Continued parking in the lot's going to be the village-owned lot. Donna's lot is a potential problem. But I really come down on the side of the factors that the neighborhood, I think the village will be enhanced if we have a functioning business in there. It's a small building. It's a unique building. We're talking about almost half the spaces that they're counting on for the viability of the business are outdoor seating for seasonal business. So I look at essential character of the neighborhood. I look at, I don't know what else they can possibly do there. This to me seems to be a skinny down plan. I hope and pray everyone's a good neighbor and we figure out the issues that people have raised concerns on. So for all those reasons and for the reasons Rachel spoke of and mentioned in her motion, I vote aye. But I recognize this is a close one. Again, I hope the neighbors can all work together and make this work, but I would vote aye.
Holdren.
Yeah, I just like to say I agree with everything everybody else has said tonight. I do think the Duncan factors that stick out to me are the owner, his predicament can't be obviated through any other method than a variance. I think no matter what they want to do there, I think they would need a variance. I think the proof is that this sat vacant for 15 years. I also think that it's good to point out that 10 years ago, the village voted on this and they overwhelmingly supported a restaurant in that place. I think it's going to be a great improvement. I think we are talking about a few parking spots here or there. And like Rachel said earlier, we've given dozens of hundreds really to other businesses in the central shopping district. I don't think another 16 for the outdoor parking or removing 3 are going to add any substantial parking situation. So I vote aye if I didn't say that already.
And Kramer.
I agree that this is a very close one in terms of the sort of very tight nature of that space. I have concerns relative to the fact that you're encroaching on the park there. So I think that number one, it's a substantial variance. Everybody else has said that. I don't think that it would yield a reasonable return without the variance being granted, just because of the nature, the size of the space and the business that's proposed there. I think the neighborhood would be enhanced by a viable, functioning, and successful business there. I think the adverse effect on the delivery of governmental services, in my view, is a concern only because I think you're looking at what goes on in the park next door, and I do have concerns relative to consumption of alcohol and how that may or may not impact sort of the quiet enjoyment of the park next door. I assume that you can't have open containers, so when you leave take your carry out. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue. I think there was knowledge that there were some zoning issues relative to parking, but as has previously been stated, there were changes made to the parking code after this purchase was made, and there is not another way to cure this problem other than granting variances relative to parking. If we're going to grant that a restaurant should be allowed to have a business in this space, which is what the voters, as previously mentioned, what the voters had indicated. And I think this is exactly the kind of situation where the spirit and intent of the zoning code is to allow for the most unique circumstances. We always talk about unique circumstances, but I think this one is probably the most unique that we've seen in the village. And I don't think, I think there may be self-creation of the hardship, but I think it's related to the fact that somebody wants to come in and have a viable business there. I will say that while I'm going to vote to approve the variance request, I think it's compelling that there's an acknowledgement that we want foot traffic in this space, and the business plan calls for rapid turnover inside and outside relative to the kinds of things that are being consumed. And both of those things will enhance turnover that hopefully won't be the kind of hardship on parking that some of the neighbors are concerned about. So for those reasons, I vote to approve the variance request.
All right, so what that means is the motion or the application is passed 4-1. Now what happens is council has 15 days to consider an appeal. 3 members of council can vote to bring this matter before council where it would actually be heard from the start. So what that means to the applicant, to Amy and to Eddie, is you have to wait 15 days to see whether council takes an appeal and wants to hear this case in front of the full council. If that does not happen, you'll receive notice from Rob Jameson as close thereto to 15 days as possible, indicating you've received your variances and you can go on. So basically what all that means is you've got to wait 15 days to hear from Rob as to whether your variances have passed or whether council will be rehearing them. All right. Not sure if anyone's still on with us, but thank you all very much. We need to continue on with our agenda. Thank you. Good luck to all involved. Okay, moving right along. Our next item for discussion is the application of the Heather Wagley Trust, 114 Bell Tower. Rob, can you please give us the background on this one?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Wade. This application was submitted by Mr. David Jezik, representing the trust regarding a generator installation at 114 Bell Tower Court. That property is permanent parcel number 932-08-317 in the limited industrial residential mixed use zoning district. Section 1130.03B6 states that a generator is an approved use in the residential mixed use zoning district, provides that it conforms to the requirements in section 1125.04F. That section requires that generators are to be located in the side or rear of the dwelling in compliance with the setback requirements of the main building. Section 1130.06B1 requires a 25-foot minimum setback to an other lot line for a 2-story attached single-family building. The rear yard of the building of this building is 15 feet deep, and the proposed generator would be located 11 feet 3 inches from the rear property line. So a variance of 13 feet 8 inches would be required. I do want to mention that this is part of the Bell Tower townhouse development, and all of the setbacks were approved as part of the subdivision approval when the original plans went in. So the setbacks that exist for this building, this 15-foot rear yard, were approved when those row houses were approved for the overall development. So that's the issue before the board today.
All right.
Variance to the one section.
All right. Who will be presenting on behalf of the trust?
I will work to promote, Dave. Geez.
This property backs up to the empty lot currently, correct?
Yes, it does. It backs up to the
Very
empty
end
lot.
one as you go around the circle right next to the path.
Yep.
Hi there, guys. How's it going?
Dave,
David?
all right. Dave is presenting, I guess, on behalf of the applicant, and Dale, if you could swear Dave in, please.
Sure, Dave, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give before the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Fortunately, this issue has nothing to do with parking, so hopefully it will not be another 2.5 hours. So Heather, I'm actually representing Heather. Heather is actually a deaf person in the community. She recently purchased her house earlier in 2020, I believe it was. My family and my wife, myself, and a couple of other folks kind of handle a lot of the caregiver issues and things like that for Heather, which is why I'm representing her and the trust which owns the residence in her stead. So she's the current occupant of it. Obviously, being part of the deaf community, most of Heather's communications, conversations, anything like that, with the outside world traditionally happens via, video conferencing or some sort of, communication back and forth, needing some sort of power. Since she had moved in last year, there have been a number of days in Chagrin Falls where there have been, just regular power outages, things like that for extended period of times, which just basically has hindered her ability to be content in the residence and happy there. To the extent she is an independent person, she does take care of most of her own things. She does her own shopping. She goes and she is involved with the community and things like that, and travels with one of her caregivers, or she'll reach out for me for little things here and there. And so initially when she had come and asked about a generator, we reached out to Shep Electric, who has done generators in the village before. And they, had submitted an initial request for a generator to Harry. And he had said, kicked it back and said, really the best place to put it would probably be here. And we'd need to come before you folks and request a variance. Spoke with Rob as well a couple times. And just kind of figuring for the aesthetics of the community, there is a driveway that basically goes kind of along the side of her property there, as you can see in the drawing that's on your screen right now. So we didn't really want to put it on the side where if a car slid off the driveway or something like that, it would go into the grass and potentially hit, obviously, a generator, which has gas and electric hookups to it. And the rear part of the property seemed like the best place to put it. And due to the fact that there's a fence there, most of the neighboring areas are relatively industrial. There is obviously residential around the community. And when I'd spoken to the folks from the Homeowners Association, they had even mentioned that there is another residence on the circle that has a generator as well. So we didn't feel like this was too imposing of a request.
Dave, can you speak to I'm a frequent walker on that walking path there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to and obviously to the left there, you have a unit that looks directly into the side of Heather's house. Can you speak to the screening, if any, that you're proposing and where it would be relative to the generator?
Yeah, we would probably do a couple of tasteful bushes kind of in line with the rest of the landscaping of the subdivision. Just to kind of hide that from the walking path and things like that, just maybe like a bush or two. It's only about a 2-foot wide unit. So the spot that it would be going would be 18 inches off of the corner of the building. And then basically kind of like along, almost like snug right in line with her house, maybe a little bit in.
And the fence, there's a fence there, right?
Correct.
This is outside of the fence. This would be west of the.
This would be in her, like basically kind of right along her deck line. She has her patio and deck are right outside that area, and then there's about 5 feet outside of that before it hits that fence.
Would you be able to see this from Bell, or from East Washington, or would you have screening on that side as well?
The East Washington side already has an existing fence. There's a long
see,
white
okay.
fence. If you see her unit is, yeah, basically like right there is kind of where we're proposing that the generator go, kind of in line with, her decking and just in line with the house. The electric service to the house comes in right there as well. And there's also access to gas through the, basically like a 5-foot stretch inside the house that would go straight out.
I
So
forgot the fence does go all the way over to almost to the walkway. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, it does go the whole way over.
But you would try and screen this from the neighbor who's looking directly into it?
Correct. Yeah. And Heather's air conditioning unit, you can kind of see it a little bit in this, but that air conditioning unit is also is on the side of the house. Our main concern in regards to it was of putting the generator to the side was obviously something that's providing electric and gas, especially during a time where like a power outage might occur or something like that. If somebody did drive off that driveway, they would basically run smack dab into that. So that would obviously be a pretty big concern of ours.
Right.
How many feet off the edge of the deck are you putting it?
It's probably, I mean that space is very, very limited. It's only about, 5 to 10 feet. The decking itself is actually a raised deck. So the deck is raised about 6 to 8 feet off the ground.
Oh, so you'll be a good 36 inches.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. It would be 36, more than 36 inches away.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I just had a question for Harry. We're talking about screening it. It's required to be screened, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
that is a requirement.
Correct.
Okay.
And I guess one more question.
Sure.
For Harry, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No.
Do you remember didn't we grant a variance in Bell Tower before?
Yeah, we did. I think it was 122 Bell Tower. So it had been the units that back up to
The storage units?
storage units there, yes.
Was that for a generator?
It was. And understand, I'm going from memory, but I think it's 122 Bell Tower.
Okay.
That would be over here further up the street.
Yeah, I remember it was the storage units were behind it. And I
Correct.
know we granted it. I didn't know if they had installed it though.
Yeah, it was installed. It's basically the same situation.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Christy, can you see if anybody is out in the audience waiting to speak?
Sure, if there are any members in the audience that are willing or wanting to speak, please raise your hand in the Zoom function.
And at this point, we'll take for or against whatever, if anybody wants to speak, just please raise your hand.
No hands raised.
Okay, going once, going twice, no hands.
Correct.
Board, no more questions.
I'll move it. I'll make a motion.
All right, Lisa, thank you.
I move that we grant the variance request for a variance to 1130.03B6 yard and setback regulations for the property located at 114 Bell Tower. It's a request for a 13-foot 8-inch variance to place a generator at that property. I believe that the property would yield a reasonable return, but in this circumstance where the property resident has specific requirements relative to the need for continued power in the case of an outage based on her special circumstances, I think that's a compelling reason to grant the variance. In addition, I believe the variance is substantial, but with required screening being implemented and in the location that it is going to be located, I believe that it won't disrupt the essential character of the neighborhood. I think that it's not going to affect the delivery of governmental services. The owner wasn't considering a generator, but due to the increased number of power outages and her need for continued non-disrupted supply permitted and that wouldn't also require a variance, and that it does meet the spirit and intent of the zoning code. And while the circumstances may be, they aren't self-created in the sense that these power outages have become more frequent and might not have been predicted when the occupant moved into the property. So for those reasons, I move that we approve the variance as requested.
Is there a second?
Second,
Andrew, was that you?
that was me.
Andrew, okay. Second by Andrew. Roll, please, Rob.
Councilman Johnson.
Rachel, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted. I vote aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
Frick.
Aye for all the reasons of the motion.
Holdren.
I vote aye for all the reasons stated.
Kramer.
Aye for the reasons stated.
Rocky.
Aye for the reasons stated. And I'd also like to add that the illuminating company has promised us that maintenance and tree trimming is underway and that 2020 should have been the worst year for power outages in our cycle. So it should get better.
Uh-huh.
Should.
If only you could predict the future.
Then I'd be a weatherman.
Or a stockbroker.
Definitely not on BZA.
Okay, so what
I would
that
have eaten
means
dinner
now,
first if I could predict the future.
yeah, what that means is if you heard the previous description, your variance request has passed 5-0. We still have the 15-minute waiting period during which an appeal can be made to council. I don't think that's ever happened, or it's very rare on 5-0 decisions. So, but you have to wait 15 days before your variance is approved, and you will get notice from Rob Jameson as close thereto to 15 days as we can get. All
Thank
right?
you guys all so much.
Thanks for your presentation.
Yeah.
Thanks for waiting so long. Sorry.
Oh, you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you again.
You too. Thank you. Okay, moving to our third and final application tonight is the application of William and Nicole Murphy, 100 Church Street. Rob, if you could do your thing and give us some background here, please.
Sure. Hold on a second. Okay, this is the application of Mr. and Mrs. William Murphy, 100 Church Street, proposing a new chimney fireplace addition on the side of their house. This is permanent parcel number 932-04-083 in the R150 zoning district. There's two sections of the zoning code that are coming before the board tonight. The first is section 1145-02B, non-conforming buildings and structures, and additions to a non-conforming building. That a non-conforming dwelling may be altered, modernized, or enlarged, provided that the alterations and enlargements conform to all of the yard regulations and setbacks. The existing building is non-conforming as the south side yard setback of 1 foot 6 inches does not meet the minimum side yard setback of 3 feet. So the current building is non-conforming as it sits on its lot. The second zoning code section is 1125-03G, area yard and height regulations, main buildings, minimum side yard setback, which requires that there must be a 3-foot minimum side yard setback on each side of the building with a minimum total of 8 feet of both side yard setbacks combined. The south side yard where the new chimney is proposed is only 1 foot 6 inches in depth, and the new chimney is proposed to be located approximately 4 inches from the property line. So a variance of 2 feet 8 inches would be required. And that's the overview. You can see on the site plan that I have brought up here, this is showing the existing house, and the new fireplace is shown right in this area. There's a picture of the house and of the side where there's currently no fireplace. So they would like to put a fireplace in this portion of the house with the narrow side yard setback.
All right. Who will be presenting? I think, Rick, are you out there?
Christie?
Working to promote Rick.
Very good.
On a separate note, Rick, we don't need 1-to-1 scale plans. My house isn't big enough for these.
Rick,
Lie on the ground and look at them.
the next person who submits these to me, I'm voting no, just out of principle. I agree, Andrew.
And Rick, we need all the trees for lumber. You know, lumber prices are kind of high, so if we can save them for the paper, that would be really great. Even though that has nothing to do with the price of lumber, but I just thought I'd bring it up.
If Rick will unmute, I'll swear him in. You gotta unmute yourself, Rick.
I thought
Okay.
I did.
Okay, do you solemnly
Go
swear?
sleep.
Oh, now you're good.
Actually, I did just for a second, but
Yeah.
we'll get back to that.
All right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rick.
So we've got a house on Church Street. It's a very nice house. We got very wonderful new residents of the community. Not sure they thought too hard about a fireplace when they bought the house, but it would be a really wonderful addition to this house to have a fireplace. It's kind of a cool thing to have, and you're in the village and everybody else has one, and so this makes a lot of sense. The house doesn't conform, even in its current setback conditions, so we're keeping this to a minimum. We're projecting out toward the property line, and we're going to get within like less than 2 inches of the property line, but we're already less than 1.6 from the property line or something like that. And it just, if we were to run the chimney up through the house, it totally destroys one of the closets in the bedrooms upstairs. And it just kind of works better to do what we want to do here. Keeps the fireplace from protruding too far into the family room. And it doesn't seem unusual to want to do this. There's plenty of other zero lot line or very close to the lot line examples of construction in the village. So we humbly request that you consider our request for a variance to let this fireplace kind of get pretty close to the lot line along the driveway for the neighbor to the south.
Rick, why can't the fireplace go in the back wall?
Well, the fire, it just doesn't work with the way the house is. If you go to the floor plan, you'll kind of see Harry or whoever's run. If you could get to the floor plans.
Hold on.
Yeah, we got all.
Tell me which one you'd like me to stop on.
Right, so go back one.
First floor plan.
So you can see the family room, and I know you can't see my cursor, but you can see how that's in the middle of the middle of the family room. And if you put it on the back wall, the front wall, it really just doesn't work because of the geometry of the space. And so it's kind of got to go there or not be there at all. And it just doesn't work the other way.
Gotcha.
So Rick, is this chimney gonna go, is it gonna go up and then turn out away from the house and go up, or is it gonna be a solid, it's solid all the way on the outside like that? Yeah.
Yes, so you can see it on the side elevation there. It goes straight up. You know, it's half in the house and half out of the house. If we were to push it all the way in the house, not only will we like take up really valuable real estate inside the family room, but it destroys closet in one of the 3 bedrooms on the second floor. It's a 3-bedroom house. So it just makes all the sense in the world to let this thing come out close to the property line. I don't know if we've heard from the neighbor or not. I don't know if they feel it's a hardship on their side or not. So I would wait to hear from them if they're here, but we don't think it is necessarily a hardship. So we hope you guys agree.
Intended
Go ahead,
to be
Blake.
stone?
Yeah, right. It's stone. It's been to the ARB. We're working with those guys. We can't technically go to them, but we've kind of preliminary walked it through. It's a 2-inch culture stone veneer on a wood box, so it takes up the minimum amount of space that we can absolutely do to make this thing work. Because we don't have a lot of room to work with. You know, again, the house doesn't conform the way it is. So when we add this thing on, it's just it creates a
any-
hardship.
Any concerns about the neighbor's driveway when you dig the foundation for this? It's
No,
not a
I mean,
hill or anything.
Yeah, it's one of those things you dig it by hand. You know, I don't think you bring a little backhoe in or anything. I think you just get some guys with shovels. I was on a site today where guys were digging, like 24-inch diameter sonotube pits for, a deck foundation, and you just got to be careful when you're doing it. So I don't think we're in danger of undermining the foundation if it's done, with thought in mind, and make sure you don't do that. It's not uncommon. Typically, nobody wants to do anything with shovels anymore, but you could do it that way, and I think that's the way it's going to have to happen. It's got to go down 42 inches.
Okay. Other questions from the board?
It looks like the house next door has an external fireplace located similarly, if that's what I'm looking at.
I will be honest, I have
Yeah,
not looked at
picture
the house
kind
next
of looks
door.
that way.
Yeah, it's not unusual in the village for a fireplace to be like this, or to, be close to a property line. And so if you look at the whole length of the property line, and we're looking for 6 feet approximately to be there. And then once upon a time, I think there was even a plan for this house to have a fireplace there. It just never happened. That this would be a reasonable request. Certainly the pooch in the photo there needs a place to cuddle up at night.
Okay.
It's a nice house. This will just embellish it even more.
Other questions, comments from the board? All right, Christy, can you see if anybody is waiting out in cyberspace?
I'd be amazed.
Well, the neighbors might have-
10:35, if anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand in the Zoom platform.
I commend you guys for your diligence tonight.
I was just more curious about the neighbor that owns that driveway.
Yeah.
Any no takers out there, Christy?
None.
And I assume that neighbor's been notified.
Yes, notifications were given. I had several people ask for project plans and information.
Oh, did you?
I don't know if that was the next door neighbor or not, but
Okay.
we did have.
People
some-
know about it.
So I know that notices were received by at least some of the people near.
Okay, going once, going twice, nobody else raising hands?
No.
All right, motion, please.
I can do a motion.
Thank you, Jim.
Unmute first. All right, I would like to make a motion for 100 Church Street. They're applying for a variance for section 114502B. This is the non-conforming building. Anything you do to it, it needs a variance. The existing house is required to have a 3-foot side yard setback, and it only has a 1 foot 6 inch side yard setback. So it needs a variance to this. And also 112503G, because of the fireplace, the new fireplace, that 1 foot 6 inch setback is actually being reduced to 4 inches. So they require a variance of 2 feet 8 inches. Oh, I got some notes here.
So actually 2 feet 8 inches would be from the required setback, but from the actual side of the existing house, it's more like 1 foot 2 inches.
Yeah, so the variance is still going to be 2 feet 8 inches, but yeah, you're
Right.
right. It's only increasing the non-conformity by another, 1 foot.
14 inches or something.
Yeah, 2 inches.
It's late, Jim, sorry.
No, no.
I had the numbers in my head earlier, but
About this much.
yeah, about that much, right.
Let the record show he was 14 inches apart.
Thank you.
Thank you, lawyer. Looking at the Duncan factor, the property in question, I believe it still will yield a reasonable return with or without this variance. I don't think the variance is substantial when you look at this house and how it's already on the property line, like many houses in the village, especially along Church Street and the neighboring streets around there. And it's only increasing the nonconformity by about 14 inches. So I don't think it's substantial. The essential character will not be altered in the negative. It'll be improved with a nice fireplace, nice looking fireplace. This will not affect the delivery of governmental services. And the property owner did not purchase the property with the knowledge of the zoning restriction. The property owner's predicament cannot be obviated through some other method other than a variance. We talked a little bit earlier, you can't move the fireplace to the back of the house or the other side. The spirit and intent behind the zoning code will definitely be observed and substantial justice done by granting this variance. And the variance is not based on circumstances that are self-created by the property owner. For all these reasons, I would like to make a motion to approve these two variances.
Second.
Okay, Lisa Kramer was second. Is there Rob, roll call, please?
Kramer,
Aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
Rocky,
Aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
Freshman Johnson,
Aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
Frick,
Aye for all the reasons stated in the motion.
Holdren.
I vote aye.
So Rick, you know what that means, 5-0. 15 days from now, you'll get notice from Rob that there's been no appeal made, if that's the case, and away you go. So 15 days later, you'll hear.
Excellent. So thank you all very much. Rachel, I applaud you for your diligent presentation of that.
That was great. You did a really good job.
For the motion on the previous matter at hand. But thank you guys for all your hard work, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Rick. Take care.
All right, guys, you bet. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Before we close the meeting, Dale, you said this is something about this is the last time we can do this, or what did you state about meetings and virtual meetings?
The legislature has not been willing to extend virtual meetings past June. So starting in July, we're going to have to go back to regular meetings now. For example, like Rob and I and Harry could still be remote, but the members of the board would have to be present, and anybody who's going to testify has to be present. Unfortunately, the view in the leadership of the Senate and the House is that we can safely meet again, even though they haven't been inside our chambers to see why that can be an issue. So as of now, from everything we know, and from talking to Senator Dolan, it's pretty clear to us that the most current bill runs out at the end of June, and we're going to have to go back to live meetings.
Okay. So, well, you obviously keep us posted if that changes. But this is July, right? June we still can have.
Correct.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Well,
Okay.
keep us posted.
Hey, Wade.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes,
Wait.
Harry.
You guys missed it. That last submission, a famous person lived in that house. Nobody picked up on that.
Is that your house, Harry?
No, that used to be a council rep to BZA's house.
Carl.
Oh, there you go.
Gosh.
Right.
I saw from the map, I looked at it and I saw that it was that, and I just totally forgot in the time of our meeting.
But he didn't need a fireplace.
No.
I was going to say, when he redid that, he should have moved the house, but he didn't think about the code. at the time.
When he remodeled the house, he got a variance.
He did.
Ooh.
Wow.
I remember. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Is there a
Good to
plaque
see
up there
everyone.
that says that identifies it? Is this-
I got a variance and probably denied the same one to others. Does it say that?
All right, guys, take
All
care.
right. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.